It's picked up. Fafita scrambling, throws deep, end zone, caught, touchdown, Kian Burnett.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Winston keeps it, following Sumo Karnbay, and the ball comes out into the end zone. It is recovered for a touchdown by Josh Kess.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
As pressure, Ward ducks away. Spencer had him. Ward flips it to Williams. How do you like this? From the sideline, push down inside the 5.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Long throw caught in Arkansas territory and a broken tackle. Noah Thomas down the sideline into the end zone. Touchdown, Texas A&M.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
And they take a downfield shot. And the catch is made. It's Ryan Williams. Still spinning free. Touchdown, Alabama. They answer in one play. 75 yards for the 17-year-old. Are you kidding us?
Now here's Paul Catalina.
It's Friday. Do I have a smoke pun for you today? I'm sure I do. But I'm not going to roll it off just willy-nilly. I mean, we already are going to be in the smokestack, even though they're not here. But it is Smokeless Fridays as they are off at high school football tonight. Garrett Ross, Emery Winter in studio with me. Emery is already hard at work at trying to get out of here early. Like, that is...
I respect it.
Yeah, no, I do too. Like, if we can give him anything where he can just leave here early, it's fine. Emery works very hard most of the time, which is why he now demands that we call him Bronco.
Exactly.
Yeah, he says, I told you, call me Bronco every day now. Ever since I just randomly said, let's call him Bronco, he's adopted it. It's like a persona.
Just lean into it, man.
Yeah, I can't wait for him to tell his girlfriend, like, hey, you can call me Emery if we're having a serious talk, but right now I'm in my Bronco persona. Mm-hmm. So, Emery Bronco Winter is here. We have several things to get to, but before we do that, let me tell you about the rundown today. Sam Khan, usually on Thursdays. This month it looks like I get them all to myself because his schedule's flipped a little bit. So we're going to have Sam Khan starting on Fridays or being on Fridays for like the next couple weeks or so, which will be exciting. That's coming up at 3:30. At 3:50-ish, Grayson Grunhafer, Sikkim365.com. At 4 o'clock, and Garrett, I'm glad that you talked me into this.
Yes.
There is a story that Clinton Portis told during an interview this week about how he wound up committing to Miami that, given the recent Antonio Pierce show cause penalty, is so appropriate. It is amazing.
It's the most Miami thing.
It
ever.
is.
But it's for that era, but Miami in particular.
And this is the U Part 2 era
that
we're talking
correct.
about. So the U Part 1 was the, Jimmy Johnson, Dennis Erickson. This is the U Part 2. These are the Butch Davis.
Yeah. God, they were filthy too.
Yeah, absolutely. Larry Coker. I can't leave Larry Coker out. He's the coach that actually did win in 01 with the best team ever.
Phenomenal team.
Oh, my gosh. I know that, and I'll just start the show out with this. If there's a team that you want to tell me is better than 01 Miami, put it in the chat, and I will tell you exactly why it's not.
I love it.
Yeah. They're just not. It was the best roster ever created.
Full of Hall of Famers.
Here's
Full of
the
Hall
thing.
of Famers, man.
I'm going to tell you, outside of the Murderers Row Yankees in 1927, before we even knew how to do this, and when we were only letting white guys play sports. The 2001 Miami roster is the best roster constructed in the history of American team sports.
And you didn't need NIL. Supposedly. Supposedly.
I mean, they had. Believe me. Yeah.
Supposedly.
Yeah. So, because I believe me, I have the roster up here, so that when you wanna say like, oh no, it's 05 Texas. Okay, fine. No. Golly. I just look at it and I'm in awe of it. There's Hall of Famers, and then there's guys who are just really good.
Yeah.
Like in the league as well. Jeez. I'm sorry. Every time I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Give you flashbacks?
This is, yeah. I mean, I saw these guys play. The 2000 team was just as good. Really. I mean, like it, but man, like across the board, holy cow. This team had Ed Reed and Sean Taylor on it in the same, like at the same time.
Yes.
Like in the same, like it wasn't like Ed Reed. They were on the field together.
Yes.
Those are the two best, like, there's only one other safety in this in their era that I put on their level, and that's Polamalu.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So it was ridiculous. Let's see. Wet Blanket says slow sports day. Buddy, there's no such thing as a slow sports day. But, yes, UT parking. 2019 LSU would outscore that Miami team.
I don't know, man. Joe Burrow would get lit up in that game. I think that the receivers that they had would get locked down pretty quick. Yeah. And I'm like, look, I love LSU. Look, that 2019 was special.
Here's the thing. Wet Blanket, I'm just going to explain. This is where we warm you up. We're just warming you up right now. We're not even into the good material. Like, this is the early warm-up of the show. But I'm gonna list off some names.
Okay.
In case anybody has the stones to, like, throw out another one. Willis McGahee, Najee Davenport, Andre Johnson, Ken Dorsey, Clinton, who was the actual Heisman finalist from this team, which will blow your mind when you hear who else is on it. Clinton Portis, Frank Gore. Let's see. Vernon Carey was a really good offensive lineman. Was actually really great. Martin Bibliv was a fantastic guard. Brett Romberg, NFL center. Joaquin Gonzalez, longtime NFL tackle. Bryant McKinney, Carlos Joseph on this team on the offensive line. Kellen Winslow Jr. Was one of the tight ends. And that was after that Jeremy Shockey. Shockey was there. Kellen Winslow Jr., Jeremy Shockey. And we're not talking about, like, this, the off-the-field stuff is
this is just
it's not germane to the argument right now. But Jerome McDougal, William Joseph on the defensive line. Matt Walters was a great player. Vince Wilfork was on that team. Jonathan Vilma was on that team.
That's stupid.
Let's see. Who am I leaving out here? Philip Buchanan, longtime NFL defensive back. I mentioned Sean Taylor and Ed Reed. DJ Williams, NFL player. Antra Roll, Mike Rumpf, and Philip Buchanan were all first-round draft picks at cornerback on that team. So, and I'm sure I'm leaving out, like, some of their little engines that could if they had those guys. But, yeah, that team was as loaded as any team. I even mentioned Darryl Jones, who was one of the better wide receivers on the team, because Andre Johnson and Roscoe Parrish were also guys who played on that team. So, yeah, that team was absolutely stacked. Daniel Acton, you mean some 01 Miami players had some off-field issues?
No.
You don't say.
No.
Yeah. So that absolutely just ridiculous roster. Just ridiculous. And yeah, I've only, like, talked to a couple of those players ever. Jonathan Vilma, I think we did it at Super Bowl, and I remember asking him about, like, what was it like being in that? And he said it was like it's like the Oscars of football, like where you walk into the room and it's just like, oh, there's Clint Eastwood, there's George Clooney, there's Brad Pitt. Like, it's just, that's what it was. Like, you walk into the room and like everybody's really good. Also, it made you like, there was anxiety ridden, right? Because everybody's just so good. And you
mess up, your spot's gone.
Yeah.
Quick.
Yeah. Vilma was a beast. He was crazy good in high school. Like, I remember when he committed to Miami, like everybody in Florida were like, yeah, that tracks. Like, he's right there. Yeah. He's from Miami. Like, there was like never a doubt. But he was one of the ones that Butch Davis, before he left, was like, no.
That dude
does not go north of here at all.
Yeah.
Like, if he even drives past another campus in Miami, we've failed. So, yeah, but we'll talk about them later. And Phil said, Miami had the best players that money can buy. Does 2005 Texas match up the best? Only because of Vince. Like, they had great players across the board, but only because of Vince and his ability to, make things happen. But, man, like, I wouldn't put that, like, I would say them and 95 Nebraska are the ones that would, because they're the ones who were the equally as physical and athletic.
And what 95 Nebraska did offensively, going up against that defense, would be freaking insane to watch.
Yeah. Absolutely, it would be. Yeah, that's the ones I would put there for sure. But, like Vince might be able to give them problems. The thing is that I think they would hit Vince far more than USC did.
Yes.
Like, it would be one of those things where, because you have DJ Williams and Vilma, and, like, Will Fork is there, so you're not going to be able to, like, the running backs would have had nothing. No wide receivers are going to be running free with that secondary. So it's going to be on Vince to make plays improvising if they played against each other, just like Tommy Frazier would have been a problem for them because of that. But in physical line to line, but it's just the second levels and
the
all
depth,
that.
too.
The depth, it just, absolutely. So we are going to get to the smokestack now on a Smokeless Friday. Smokeless Friday, brought to you by the Anti-Smoking Commission. I don't know. I don't have it today. I just don't have it. I don't have it. I think I've used them all up. I don't know any more brands because I've done Redman and Skull and Copenhagen. I've done them all. I don't have any more. All right, first up, Jimbo Fisher on Sirius Satellite Radio in an interview said, we need revenue sharing, we need a salary cap for all schools, and the other part of this is the tampering that other schools do with players is utterly ridiculous. The big schools are going and getting players constantly from other schools, and it's being done illegally. Those guys are developing players, and then they get to go up and reap the rewards. Here's the thing about tampering.
Right.
No one can really, and this is the kind of the rule number one about the coaching circles is you don't rat people out.
Correct.
And part of the reasons you do that is that
job security.
Well, job security, you might have to work with people, but the other thing about it, so like if I'm at A&M and I know that Oklahoma has directly tampered with a player on my roster. If I'm Mike Elko, I have to be damn sure that no one in not only my circle of coaches, but now name, image, and likeness collectives,
correct,
and all of that has done it either. And that's like, it's too much to deal with because all it's going to take is, a picture of one guy and a coach, right? So you got, let's just say it's Mike Elko. Mike Elko knows that Oklahoma, essentially stole a defensive tackle off his roster.
Correct.
And knows that it was the defensive tackles coach that recruited him when he was at another place that did it, right? So he knows that happened. He has direct evidence of it. Well, they could have a picture of Mike Elko shaking hands with the NIL collective guy who paid who stole a guy off their roster. Right? 5 years before, and be like, oh, well, look at this. This is you and this guy. You're telling me he didn't tell you that he talked to so-and-so and then all of a sudden he transferred there. So, like, those things it's very hard to police. And here's the rub. There's a way to do all of this. It's not like this is completely new. Mm-hmm. But it's going to take the universities admitting that this is not amateur athletics anymore.
They just won't do it, and I don't understand what the holdback is, because every day more and more evidence comes out to show that it is. This is a big business. This is professional. They're professional athletes, right, that you're dealing with now. And then as far as like curtailing the tampering and things, I don't think you can necessarily do that with all the different ways that you can get in contact with people, whether it's DMs or different technologies where your messages disappear. And I know everything's technically not gone, but in the immediate sense, it can be gone. Also, I think it's difficult, as we've seen throughout the years, especially lately, that you can't keep track of everybody on your staff. We've seen it with the Connor Stallion stuff. We've seen it with Dion and the coach going to Saudi Arabia. We've seen it in other instances. It's just there's so many moving parts, and I think the bigger the school and the more people you bring in, whether it's analysts and that the trickle-down effect from that, I don't even think some of these head coaches know who's totally all on their staff or in their building at times. So, yeah, I think it's difficult to track that. And while you want to hold people accountable, you know that if you do that, even if it's not like a player or something, you make somebody mad, they're going to come back on you and discover something about your program or something you've done in the past and cause more turmoil for you. So it's kind of like a no-win situation for everybody involved until somebody finally steps up and puts some structure behind this. It penalizes you for actually tampering. But I mean, it's kind of like a long fight ahead that I don't know how you're going to fix.
Yeah, I don't either. Now, look, there's a way to maybe, to maybe you can't really stop it, because Scott of Greywater Watch makes a good point here. Like, look at the NBA. There's too many ways to communicate.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah,
there's too many ways. Easy. It's too easy to do. But there's, like, if you start treating it like free agency and other things where you do put rules in place for it, like, I'm not going to use the term guardrails, but if you have a system in place that's not just chaos, then there's a way to at least slow it down. But you got to figure out how to put a system in place without getting sued now, and nobody can do that. Brett Bingham, I agree with Jimbo, but I do find it ironic that the pot is calling the kettle black. Oh, yeah, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure that is what's going on. But I harken back to a moment, and in the 2008 presidential, one of the debates between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. And it's one of those things where someone had an opportunity to, like, maybe make a dent and they whiffed on it. And this is obviously Mitt Romney because he didn't win or come close. But in the debate, they were talking about outsourcing and how many manufacturing jobs had gone overseas. Mm-hmm. Well, Mitt Romney had done that. Like, one of his businesses he's a very wealthy man, and he had sent a lot of business overseas. And he said in the debate, when they asked him about it, he said, look, there's a way to fix this, but it's like he didn't want to admit that, like, he knows how to fix it because he knows
that's every problem
exactly why it happened, right? Yeah. So what he should have done is just been like, look, I've outsourced. I know how it works. I see the error of my ways. I should not have done that, and here's how I will fix it. So I know that I have a plan that will completely counteract this because I participated in it. So if you admit that, but that's the same thing with, these college leaders and not want to admit that they're pro sports. They're not saying, like, oh, there's a model for this. Mm-hmm. Then look, there's a model for this all over the world. There are 15 and 16-year-old kids in Europe playing basketball and soccer at the professional level and getting paid to do it.
Yep.
And no one's getting hurt. It's just how it is. And, I would love to just kind of dare, find the most, crazy patriotic ones and be like, hey, Europe is kicking our butt in this. How do you feel about that, Mr. America? And then they'll be like, hell no, not in this country.
Yeah.
We don't want the Frenchies to do something better than us. This is what you do. So take models, adjust. Obviously, you have to get an adapter, right? Mm-hmm. What works in Europe doesn't necessarily work here, but if you get an adapter, then it'll work, right? So get adapters to that. Adapt to the realities of the situation and then move forward. Because I do think that while like there doesn't need to be a lot of restriction on players' earnings or caps on earnings,
right?
I do think that like if you admit that you are a thing, then it helps people all agree to this. And then if you want to be part of it, you have to agree to rules, you know?
Right.
And it's out of whack, and it's always been out of whack. And if we can even get it close to balancing, it's going to start with everybody admitting what this is. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. You have to admit what it is. And like I don't think a salary cap for schools is ever going to happen in a million years. Like there's just not.
No, they can't agree on anything right now. There's no way you're going to agree on what the salary cap would be.
Is the SEC going to agree on the salary cap so that the Big 12 can compete with them?
No.
I mean, that's just it. So, yeah, absolutely. All right, next up. To that end, we have several midseason transfer announcements. Right now, 2 of them are from UCF. UCF wide receiver Xavier Townsend, who had 4 receptions and a touchdown versus Colorado last week, got a red shirt and entered the portal. Also, UCF defensive back Byron Threats, or is it Threats, has informed the UCF coaches that he plans to redshirt and transfer. He's got a year left. Played his first 3 years at Cincinnati and was part of the 21 CFP team. Has 19 starts under his belt in college. And then another one, NC State defensive end Red Hibbler plans to enter the NCAA transfer portal. His agents of Young Money APAA say he led NC State in stacks last season with 6.5. He'll have 1 year of eligibility remaining. He had 6 tackles this year, a JUCO transfer, 7 tackles for loss in 2023, his first season at NC State, and 6.5 of those were sacks. Now, that sounds like a good-ish player, but, who are you kidding, buddy?
Yeah.
Some of that, sometimes you're like, okay, you had 7 tackles for loss. Okay, that's good. That's great. I'm sure they appreciate every single one of them, but, I mean, when I hear about a guy, wanting a better opportunity, I'm thinking of a guy who's, got 19 sacks, is in the backfield a bunch. So, I'm not saying those guys are being tampered with. I mean, I don't know that, but those are the kind of things you see and go, okay, well, somebody's said something to them. Like going back to Matthew Sluka.
Yeah.
Some kind of bad information got in Matthew Sluka's ears and his family's ears, and that started all this. When that happened, we will probably never know.
No.
Did that happen on his recruiting visit? Did it happen sometime in the middle? What was the thing? Because the collective says, nobody ever said $100,000.
No.
The coach, I think the coach in question's I don't know if I ever said $100,000.
Well, there's a major difference between the $100,000 and the $3,000 he was getting. So, so there's a major disconnect somewhere.
Well, also, $100,000 to get a guy who's at Holy Cross?
Yeah, no.
Know the market. Know the market for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of ridiculous. From our friend Dave Bartu. Is this where we are? Am I in the right spot?
Yeah.
Okay. From Dave Bartu, who is College Football Matrix. SEC Mike on his show today, Michael Bratton, mentioned that he didn't think that A&M had a top 5 home field advantage in the SEC.
That's a stupid comment, first off.
Yeah.
First off.
Yeah, I mean, not really, because he's gonna get hate watches from College Station all over the place. But, I mean, it's not it's in the eye of the beholder. But Dave Bartu, home field advantage is largely a myth cooked by fans that believe they have a strong impact on game outcomes. And ironically, the SEC has the lowest home field advantage in college football, with over 74% of all games the last decade won by the better recruiter regardless of the field. So, especially when it comes to this kind of a thing, I mean, what college football majors, what Dave does, is he finds who the best recruiters are, who the plus recruiter, who are that, and then he ranks them.
Right.
he then sells that information to schools and conferences. So it's not like public because it's privileged information.
Right.
But he will, like, he's come on our show a bunch of times, and he'll tell you who overall rated are the best stats, and those things. So Bartu is just saying here, like, look, home field advantage doesn't matter 74% of the time when the better recruiters on the sideline. The two best recruiters in the SEC were Kirby Smart and Nick Saban, right? So there you go. And then the other, okay, and I'll even go back another few years. If you go into the last decade, who was the best, like, I would say the best, like, pound-for-pound recruiter. Now, he wasn't the best pound-for-pound coach, was Ed Orgeron. Ed Orgeron,
he could recruit.
Yes. I mean, he helped build 05. Like, he built Miami teams. Mm-hmm. He built USC teams. He built LSU teams. Now, when it came down to X and O coaching, not really
hit or miss.
Not really his total bag. Like he works, like, he's kind of stuck in the middle of, I think his style of building a team works well in the modern era, but he's just not new enough, right? He's just not new enough. Plus, I do think he really enjoyed, like, the post-2019
That got a little to his head, and
I think he
got
took
off the rails.
Too much of a victory lap on it.
Too much, yeah.
But now, I mean, he's very clearly, if you listen to him talk, loves being a retired football coach.
I don't blame him.
No,
I mean, got a hell of a spot in Miami too.
Yeah,
his condo's sweet.
Yeah, what do you say? Like, oh, they paid me $19 million to leave. I was like, I'll get the hell out right now. Oh boy.
No, I think
I'm gonna go back to my condo in Miami.
I think it's an interesting take. I mean, we see some places where home field advantages do work, but I think, like, for instance, like here in Waco, we've seen it where Baylor has no home field advantage, and they've had no recruiting success against other programs. So it kind of goes hand in hand. But you also have the weird scenarios where, like, BYU technically isn't ever going to out-recruit somebody, but they have the perfect situation where if it's a night game and the environment's right, I think it's kind of in between that. Now, when you get into the SEC, I think there's just so much parity there, and there's so much depth that if you have, like, a wrong injury or somebody, it could be your night. And I think, but if you kind of look at last year, LSU lost to Ole Miss. I think if you look, Lane Kiffin obviously was the better recruiter in that.
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin's an elite recruiter. So I think there's some validity to it, but I think it's more so somewhere in the middle on where the truth actually lies in the statement.
We're going to talk about it with Evan Abrams a little bit later in the show when it comes to gambling, but he has some hard numbers on it too.
Yeah.
He has some hard numbers on it. So that's at 5:00-ish today on the show. Just real quick, a couple things. Trey Harris, Ole Miss. He has been downgraded from probable to questionable for this week's game for the Rebs, which is not great news for them because he's one of the best players on their team. He's fantastic. Like, people aren't talking about Trey Harris because there's, like, a couple other guys, like, putting up, like, kind of ridiculous things, but people need to start talking about him. He's a Biletnikoff candidate for sure this year. Also, here's a couple of fun ones. UNLV is having a donut eating contest to kick off Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Will it be eating pink frosted donuts, the fastest 10 minutes during the game tonight with Syracuse. Hot dog eating champion and UNLV alum Miki Sudo, former UNLV offensive lineman Dr. Tony Terrell, and UNLV hoops coach Kevin Kruger are among the participants. They will see who can eat 24 pink frosted donuts the fastest in honor of that. My money's on Miki Sudo.
Oh, yeah.
As a competitive eater, but a really fun thing. I hope I'm locked in and I can see that. I can't wait for them to share it to social media because we'll certainly clip it and show part of it. I think that. All right, one more thing. We're going to save the H-Town Blue video for the 4 o'clock after the Clinton Portis most Miami story of all time. This was asked about in the chat room. Yes. FIU Miami Vice uniforms. These are chef's kiss.
Love them.
So great. FIU. Same deal. Same deal we made Western Kentucky. Emory, you know what to do. Same deal. I'll do something silly within reason. Like I think I'm going to paint myself like the Hilltopper. I don't know. Whatever I have to do.
Oh, Halloween, man. Hilltopper.
Yeah. Whatever I have to do this, I'll dress up like Don Johnson. on the show, I'll do that. I hate Halloween. I hate it, but I will do it to get one of these helmets sitting back here. I will absolutely do it. And Green Gridiron, our sponsor who does a lot of this stuff, they don't have them yet, but I will send
get
a
them
couple.
In stock,
I'll send a couple emails. And if that doesn't happen, then we'll get them from Green Gridiron. But Western Kentucky, Florida International, FIU, look at me. Look at me in my eyes right now. I want one. I want it. It's awesome. Awesome.
I love these. I think this is the most Miami thing ever. I kind of wish they would make these their full-time uniforms and just fully dive in and embrace it.
Yeah.
This is magnificent, dude.
They're Pitbull, they're Miami Vice. Like, they're embracing all parts of it.
They know.
Give me a Jimmy Buffett uniform in there. Oh, that one. That one I'll just buy. I'll just do it as a parrot head. When we come back, Sam Kahn of The Athletic joins us. This is 365 Sports.
PettyClinicLowT.com can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. Hi, this is David Smoke. As you get older, usually upper 30s, but most likely in your 40s and eventually the 50s, when you get your testosterone checked, 1 out of every 3 or 4 men have low testosterone levels. It's part of father time. It's just living life, and that clock starts to tick. Maybe you're fortunate it doesn't have any effect on you. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. Tell them I sent you. They will set you up to get your blood work. If they get the results Dr. Petty does, he'll look at them, and then if you need testosterone boost, he can put you in a program to increase your testosterone levels so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. PettyClinicLowT.com.
It's Ram Power Days at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get ready to rule the road in a brand new 2024 Ram 1500 with an amazing 20% off MSRP. Or drive away with 0.9% financing for 72 months. Don't miss out on unbelievable savings. It's all happening right now at Allen Samuels.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Ghost Hydration is a fully transparent, fully loaded, full-flavored hydration drink that we've all been waiting for. Ghost is caffeine-free with electrolytes, 0 sugar, and low sodium that'll hydrate your body before, during, and after your workout. Consumer loved with authentic flavors, so grab and enjoy a Sour Patch Kids Blue Raspberry and Red Berry, along with the Kiwi Strawberry, Orange Squeeze, or Lemon Lime. Ghost Hydration can truly be used anytime. Remember, it's formulated for sports, but made for life.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
When you work with a bank, you should expect the best of everything. That includes face-to-face personal service and the kind of community banking care that only comes from one neighbor to another. That's exactly what you'll get from the First National Bank of Central Texas, where you will know your banker works just as hard as you do. Once again, that's the First National Bank of Central Texas. Settle for nothing less than the first. Member FDIC.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Welcome back, Paul Catalina, Sam Kahn of The Athletic. And Sam's, Sam, we've had to do this a couple of times, but I get you, like, just you and me for, like, the next couple weeks, right?
I liked your smokeless puns, the smokeless Fridays.
Yes.
I know puns are low hanging fruit for humor, but I'm a dad, so I'm down with dad humor and dad jokes.
Yeah, look, I'm not, but I'm 44, so like people ask like when you are 44, people ask you like, oh, where do your kids go to school? Like, I don't have any kids. They're way more shocked that I don't have kids. Like at 44, I've made it this long, so I might.
But you're still in the demographic for this type of joke, though.
Yeah,
I mean, you're not above these puns.
Yeah, I can't just be like, oh, well, I didn't have kids, so I'm like, no, I'm the age that I should be making these jokes. Like, I can't run away.
100%.
Yeah, it's part of what like. When I'm 70, am I going to not wear not matching clothes just because they're comfortable? No, I'm doing that because I would have earned it. That's how it works. Sam, you and Justin Williams had the mailbag this week. And first question off the bat was about the Big Ten and the SEC and their little cabal that they have going on. It makes me very nervous as a fan of college football as a whole that – this happens and the other conferences aren't involved. And some people will say, don't worry about it. This is just them, making the plan so then they can take it to everybody else. But it also feels like this is where they decide to do something crazy and push everybody else out, thus ruining college football the way we know it.
Yeah, if they keep taking and taking and taking, do you think at some point they're just going to say, oh, we've taken enough, we're just going to stop right there? Yeah. I don't think so. And I don't know if or when they'll try to push the other conferences out of the playoff, but we're already to the point that I think is a little bit alarming because they already are now getting, starting in 2026, more revenue from the college football playoff than the other conferences. They're each getting 29%, and then the ACC and the Big 12 are going to be in the teens, I think somewhere between 12 and 19% of the revenue. So you're already getting favorite status that way. And you already have a little bit of favorite status because you already make more money than everyone else. And that's fine because that's, through the broadcast contracts. But I don't understand why we have the desire, why they have the desire to etch even more favorite status in the stone by codifying automatic bids for multiple teams from their conferences. I don't get why it's necessary. I made this comparison when we answered this question in the mailbag. That would be like saying, okay, the NFC East is going to get 3 playoff bids, but the NFC South only going to get 1. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, it's ridiculous. And so and the thing is it's not even necessary because guess what? In the at-large system, as long as we have a subjective selection committee, history tells us that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to get more at-large teams anyway. So you don't even have to go this far because you're going to get more teams anyway. Making the automatic bids codified in multiple for SEC and Big Ten, what it does is it essentially pushes out any chance of a second Big 12 or a second ACC team coming in and getting more of that pie. So it's more participation for you, and by the way, more money for you.
Yeah. It's one of those things that's the other thing I've always been of the belief that the SEC didn't want the automatic bids because Greg Sankey's ultimate plan is to get half the field. Well, if you have automatic bids, then you're never going to get half the field because you're going to have to at least, placate the other conferences a little bit. So unless you get all 6 of those automatic bids, then you didn't really have what you could potentially have. This year, they're going to have at least 4, if not 5, when it comes down to the 12, and there are going to be years where they could easily get 6, and no one will say a word because those will be 6 of the better teams in the country. So, again, it just seems unnecessary, like you said, unless there's another plan on the back end of this.
Yeah, because you're right about Sankey had said before they would rather be all at larges, which essentially is what the 4-team playoff was, because that gives his league a better chance. But when you start guaranteeing, okay, 1 to the Big 12, 1 to the ACC, 1 to the Group of 5, ultimately Sankey's hope is to get as many teams as possible in. Well, why leave it to the selection committee when you can just guarantee your teams in just by writing it into the rules? I think it's ridiculous. And I hope we stay as far away as possible from that happening. But I have some fears. And I even read Tony Batiti did an interview with our Scott Docterman yesterday at Big Ten Basketball Media Days. And he didn't really say it in a threatening way, but you can kind of read between the lines is, hey, we want to see how this works in the first year of the 12-team playoff and see how they're selecting the at-large teams, which to me, between the lines, reads as, if you don't pick the teams the way we think you should pick them, then we're going to try to push for this.
Yeah, that's just, it scares me. It just really scares me that we're going to, and then we get to the thing of, okay, if you're going to do a Super League, if they decide it could be a Super League, there's some teams in the SEC and Big Ten that I think that they would be like, well, you guys aren't really super enough. Like, if we're going to be the Avengers, we're going to go get, we're going to take you 10 programs out and then get the 10 programs that fit this title a little bit more from the ACC and Big 12 and Notre Dame, and then this will be our Super League, and then all the rest of you do whatever you want. We don't care.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest fears is because, is Alabama and Ohio State going to want to share the revenue and the attention and the benefits with the Vanderbilts and the Illinois of the world, or the Northwesterns of the world? I would imagine if they didn't have to, they wouldn't. And so you wonder if when we get to the next set of media rights contracts, are you going to start seeing some of the upper tier teams and upper tier schools in these leagues start pushing for unequal revenue sharing? And if they don't, are they going to take their ball and go home? Ultimately, it all looks to me like what European soccer tried to do 3 years ago when they tried to form their own Super League. The difference is, across the pond, all the fans revolted, even the fans of the favorite status teams that would have been part of that Super League. They were up in arms and they were like, no, this is horrible. Why would you ever do this? Whereas I don't think we have that type of mentality here. I think there's going to be obviously fans that are on the outside looking in. And certainly I think there'll be some fans of the Big Ten and SEC teams are going to be like, well, that doesn't really look right. But are we really going to revolt in that way? I would imagine this would open the Big Ten and the SEC up to some lawsuits if they end up starting to go that way. And you're probably going to get some politicians involved in it as well, which is a whole nother can of worms. But yeah, it's a little bit of a troubling path, especially when you read the tone of like what Greg Sankey said on that podcast earlier this week that Brandon Marcello posted on social media. Like, it doesn't seem collegial. It doesn't seem like they're wanting to work together with everybody. It's just like, we're going to just do what's best for our league only and forget everybody else.
Yeah, that's where it, and maybe there's a point where if they get the new governance set up and house settlement and all that it shifts back the other direction, but I just don't see it happening. All right, let's talk about some of the games this weekend, Sam. Let's start with A&M and Mizzou. A&M is favored in this game right now by 2.5 points. Low over-under at 48.5. Mizzou has not quite looked like a top 10 team yet, and this is an opportunity for A&M and Mike Elko to maybe make a statement. Do they have the juice to stop Luther Burden and Brady Cook and everything good that Mizzou has going on there? Because they haven't quite looked like the team from last year, but I don't think they're far off from that team from last year.
No, and for my money, Luther Burden is one of the best players pound for pound in college football. So that's going to be a challenge in and of itself. I do think A&M has the talent to make this a game, and an ugly game, so to speak, just because I love what they have up front. I think they're tremendously athletic and explosive on the defensive line. I think they're definitely improved in the secondary as well. So I like what they're doing on the defensive side of the ball. That question to me is if this game, for whatever reason, gets into the 30s, is A&M ready to kind of keep up, so to speak, offensively? We know they're going to want to run it. We know Marcel Reed is kind of settled in, but it's still not fully clean. Or I think where we see it and we're like, I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's talented, and I think they're doing a better job of getting him settled in this offense. But again, this is his fourth start now, I guess, or third start now. So coming up. So there's still a little bit of a learning curve there. And so that's going to be interesting to see how if they have to get into a shootout of sorts, how do they handle it? But I don't think it's going to be. I think this is going to be a game that stays in the mid to high 20s. And I think it's going to get uglied up a little bit by A&M's defense. But I love what Mizzou has done. I think Drinkwitz has done a great job getting them to where they are now and really raising the talent level. They've recruited well. Retaining Luther Burden in the offseason was a big deal too. And that's not to be undersold at this point in this climate of college football. If you're able to keep your stars and you're not at a blue blood program, that's a big deal. So this is going to be a fascinating game, a real measuring stick game for both of these teams, where I think we find out, is Missouri really legit by going and getting a top 25 win on the road, or is this the first ranked win for Mike Elko's Texas A&M?
I want to ask you about one more SEC game, because it's not the most exciting week in the SEC, but we got an SEC Big 12 crossover game this week, and UCF is going to Gainesville, and Billy Napier is hanging on by, like, it is, he is in, like, Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones, like, territory right now. Like, he's right about there. Do you think UCF rolls in and wins this game? They're favorites right now, very close, 1.5. But they did get punched in the mouth last week by Colorado, which is the next topic we'll talk about they might actually be getting better. But UCF, they've looked cohesive this year. Florida's a mess. They're an absolute mess. So unless they fix that on their bye week, I just don't see it happening for them.
Yeah, and I know some people are going to have pause because UCF lost to Colorado last week, but here's the thing. I asked, can Florida stop UCF from running the ball when they want to? Because we know Gus Malzahn, we know that offense, and we know the way they've built that roster now. They loaded up that backfield. They got KJ Jefferson now at quarterback, and I think if they don't have to throw it, they won't. And so I saw A&M kind of go take over that game in Florida in the Swamp a couple weeks back, and they were able to kind of assert their will up front. If UCF can do the same thing, that might be curtains for Billy Napier, because Florida cannot afford to lose this game. Certainly Napier cannot afford to lose this game, because it's an in-state program that they hadn't really scheduled before. Now they're doing this 2-for-1. UCF used to be in the group of 5, obviously down their second year of the Big 12. But just from a perception standpoint, if you're Florida, you cannot lose this game. But this, to me, is a game tailor-made for Gus to go in and take that team and go pull off win. So I'm not going to be shocked at all if that happens. And I think it's a real pressure cooker for Napier and the Gators.
Yeah, and the fan base at Florida has no respect for UCF. None.
No.
I mean, like, it's they don't, like, they should, but again, and they're never going, like, UCF, could win 7 national championships in a row, and they'd be like, well, you guys are Johnny-come-latelys. Like, that's what they think about it, because that's ingrained in their DNA, like, as SEC and Florida fans and all that. So that's why it's not going to look good for him, and it's probably why he's in there going like, oh my God, like, just let me get fired after I lose to Georgia. Like,
it's a no-win. It's a no-win, because if you win this game, you're supposed to. If you lose it, it's a disaster. It's the quintessential when you're the big boy program, you're the blue blood program, so to speak. You're not supposed to lose these games. But when you play a team like this that's pretty good, and I think UCF is pretty good, it's a bunch of landmines, man, and it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be a real pressure cooker for Billy Napier and the Gators.
Absolutely. In the Big 12, what's your take on Oklahoma State and how the wheels have come off?
I'm really shocked, because, I say I'm shocked, and also there's part of me that maybe in the back of my mind kind of wondered if this would happen, because I always feel like Oklahoma State zigs when we think they're going to zag, and then they zag when we think they're going to zig, and you can never really quite put a finger on where they're going to be. But they really have been much worse than I thought they would be. The fact that they have not been able to really get the running game going consistently has surprised me. And just considering how much talent they returned, and they just don't look like that type of team. They look to me a little bit disoriented. You wonder about, the quarterback situation, because Alan Bowman, I think we knew he had a ceiling, but certainly that doesn't seem to be working out super well this year either. So there's just a lot of questions that they need to answer. And, West Virginia coming in, I think, is a good team. I don't think they're a great team, but I think they're certainly good enough to go in there and beat Oklahoma State with the talent they have. So they're in a really tough spot right now. And this, to me, is a week for Oklahoma State where we're going to find out, do you have some fight, and are you going to flip this season at some point? Because if you're going to, I think you have to do it now. And if you don't, then I think you start wondering, you're just going to write off the season, and you're going to have massive changes after the season.
If Kansas loses to Arizona State, do they change the play caller?
Wow, that's a great question. Gosh, you're only 5-6 games into the 1 year into year one of Jeff Grimes. I think it's worth asking. And I don't know how much of the question I too have is how much is it is Grimes and how much of it is Jalen Daniels, because he hasn't played well either, turning the ball over left and right. So it's a fair question to ask, and I think it's a tough spot for Kansas to be in because Arizona State has played some really good ball to start this year. But yeah, that is one of the ones that I would 100% say I was wrong about. I thought when he got to Kansas, I thought that was going to work out really well. I thought the transition from Andy Kotelnicki to Grimes was going to be fairly smooth, even though the offenses were different, just because there were some similar elements in terms of the misdirection and some of the different things they did in the run game. I thought it would be a lot smoother transition with that talent than it has been, and it has been nothing but a disaster so far.
Texas Tech and Arizona, over under in this game 64.5. It's going to blow right past that. Right past that. Has Tech fixed their issues enough to where they can get around, that defense and win games? Or is it going to be 44-41 every week like it was against Cincy?
I think they're good enough offensively to win most of the games on their schedule, but they still, to me, are not there defensively yet. They're giving up too much on third down. They're giving up they're second to last in the conference in yards per play allowed. They have just got to get better defensively. So this is a spot where you go up against a team with two really explosive offensive players with Arizona, with Fafita and McMillan. The game plan to me is pretty straightforward. You got to keep those two guys in check. If you can do that, then you have a shot to win it. If you don't, then you're going to be in trouble. I do think talent-wise, Tech is good, and I think Tech is going to have a chance to be in this. If they win this game this weekend, I think they're going to have a chance to be in the conversation down the stretch when we get into November. Because if you get off to a 3-0 start in the Big 12, I think that puts you in a really, really good spot down the stretch, even if they still have some defensive issues. But when I watch them, they're not lacking talent. I think a lot of it is just like execution, discipline, missed assignments, things like that. I think they've got to shore that up sooner rather than later.
Yeah, for sure. They do. Now to Baylor and Iowa State. Baylor's taking this 2-game skid in the Big 12 now, losing to Colorado, gut-wrenching fashion, then losing to BYU after falling behind and almost getting it back. Like they almost got it back, but wound up losing. Now they go to Ames, one of the toughest places to play. They're double-digit underdog in this game. Iowa State is they're clean. They're like the most OCD program in the world. You walk, I have a feeling you just walk into the office, everything's clean on right angles. Matt Campbell, this is the Matt Campbelliest team he's had in quite a while, where they don't do stupid things. They're very efficient. Baylor is not that at all. And Dave Aranda's even more under the gun than he has been before, because they're 2-4. If they lose this game, they have to go 5-1 or 4-1 on the way out to win it, to get to a bowl game, which is not easy to do in this conference. And they already would be at 2-5. How does Baylor combat the efficiency of Iowa State?
Well, first off, you got to start quicker. That was the thing that really got me last week when they played BYU, is coming off that loss to Colorado. I thought this is a chance for this team to respond. It's a chance for this team at home to kind of put its foot down and say, we're not going to let that linger. And they just look so listless in the first quarter plus, falling down into that big hole. And I know they came back, and I like the fight that they showed, but there's something about that really troubles me. And I just don't see, unless Iowa State just comes out and lays an egg, I just don't see a path here for Baylor. I think after what has happened the last 2 weeks, I think I've kind of lost faith in Baylor at this point, at least as currently constructed. I was looking back at it. They have won 3 of their last 19 games against FBS opponents. That is really, really bad. And it's always something, whether it's just not making a play down the stretch, or you come out and you look like you have no energy, no edge. And unless we see some of that in the first half this week, I don't see why this game will be any different against Iowa State. And Iowa State's at home. They got one of the best defenses in the country. They're 4th in points per drive. They're 11th in yards per play. I mean, John Haycock defense is about as reliable as it gets. And so I will say that I do like what Baylor has done offensively since Sawyer Robertson's been in the lineup. I think some of the play calling and some of the schemes that they have cooked up with Sawyer, especially in the quarterback run game, has been really good. So if there's one thing that I would latch onto in this game, it's just like, hey, let Sawyer cook. Let him distribute the ball and open some running lanes for him, and I'll let him move the chains that way, because I think that has been the one thing when I watch Baylor that really stands out to me that I think, hey, that's something you can build off of.
Yeah, I know that, like, Mack Rhodes does not want to let Dave Aranda go. Like, he has been really committed to making it work, but it's just too much of the same thing over and over again for those questions to get answered until it stops happening. And I mean, you just see it, like, they find a way. It's not the same every week, but it's kind of the same circumstances where they either fall way behind and have to come back, or they're in control an entire game like Colorado and then can't put a stamp on it at the end. Yeah,
and that's the thing, is they're finding ways to lose rather than finding ways to win. Mm-hmm. And that's the sign. That's a bad sign for your program, because ultimately it eats away at players' confidence too. Because then when you get in a tight game situation, then you're not having the confidence to say, hey, we're going to go finish this. You're going to have players who have been through it over and over and over again the last year plus, almost 2 years now, that are going to wonder, well, how's it going to go wrong this time? I think that's a real thing. I think you see teams that get deflated after certain things happen. For instance, I was watching Iowa State and Houston last week, and Houston was in that game. They have obviously not scored a point in 2 weeks. They were in that game at halftime down 3-0. And then after Iowa State scored to go up 10-0, it just felt like the air just got let out of the building or at least on that sideline, Houston sideline. And so I think that's a real thing. And that's why when you have a chance to win a game like they did against Colorado a couple weeks ago, you got to finish on it. And when you don't, you've got to answer and you got to respond. And they just didn't. They just waited way too long before they got things started against BYU. And by then it was too late. If you're Aranda, I think you're spinning it as, hey, we showed some fight. Let's get back on it this week and get going. But you've got to have the results at some point, because if the results don't follow, then what are the players putting their confidence in? Yeah, absolutely. Sam, are you at a game this weekend or no? Yeah, I'll be in College Station tomorrow morning for Mizzou and A&M. Next week, are you going to the Texas OU? Of course. Red River. I always got to go to Red River, man. Yeah. Look. No other place I'd rather be. Yeah. Well, make sure you stop by Fletcher's for me. 100%. I'm going to. That's the first place I will go. We'll go all the way around to Big Tex and go to that stand to get my Fletcher's corny dog. 100%. Yeah, absolutely. I'll stop and get tickets, and really that's the only thing I get, because like when you go to the game, you're like so busy, and I haven't been in years, but like you're so busy, like, well, I can't go get fried ice cream or anything else. I'm just gonna get this corn dog and go. But I will be like, how much is Fletcher's? How many tickets? Give me that many. I'll be on my way. So corn dog for breakfast. By the way, with the 2:30 kick this year, it can be a little relaxed in the morning. You can kind of take your time at the State Fair this morning. So I'm excited about it. Yeah, that 2:30 might be like the fair might push back next year and say, hey, let's get back in the morning. There's too much. Gives a little more time for pre-gaming, Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's maybe too much. Sam Kahn of The Athletic. Sam, we'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much. Take care. All right. Sam Kahn with us here on The Athletic. Next up, Grayson Grudenhafer, SicEm365.com. Then the most Miami recruiting story ever is coming up after that. This is 365 Sports.
There's nothing like a well-marbled, tender cut of beef. Nowhere better to get that beef than straight from the ranch. Get the best quality steaks and burgers at TexasBeefHouse.com. I've told the story and proud to tell the story of what the Duvall family has done right outside of Tida with their ranch. I have been there. I have seen them as they make sure all of what they have when it comes to their cattle and more are always taken care of. They have live auctions for you to buy steak, hamburger patties, what you want, the way you want it, how much you want, and at the price you want. There's no sticker. You don't walk into a store and they tell you this is how much this steak is going to cost. This is how much their Wagyu steaks, also hamburger patties and more, ground beef will cost. You tell them by going to their various live auctions, and they've had 3 of those auctions, in fact, in the month of September. They just wrapped one up, in fact, last night. But there's more to come, including October 2nd and 3rd, October 23rd and 24th. TexasBeefHouse.com. Well-marbled, tender cut of beef from their pasture to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year. It's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford. Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
It's football and tailgate season. If you want product for the grill or smoker, charcoal, season these marinades, sauces, Waco Custom Marketplace is your home to help prep, cook, and enjoy your food. Tailgate must-like brisket, tri-tip, fresh-made burgers, sausage, chicken wings, and if you want steaks, call in your order and pick them up. Bacon wrap fillets or any kind of ribeyes. USDA Select, Choice, and Prime that melt in your mouth. House-made sausage and jerky. Also, Waco Custom Marketplace, a one-stop shop for tailgating, barbecue cook-offs, and family get-togethers, fundraisers with fair prices to you, the customer. A bakery with fresh baked bread and kolaches. There's cold beer, wine, and soft drinks. Serving Waco restaurants and families since 1940. A cut above the rest. Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Come in, 365 Sports. Grayson Grudhaver, SicEm365.com. And Grayson, Baylor off of 2 close losses, although BYU for a long time was not close. I mean, that game for a good stretch was BYU jumped out in front. I think the morale on this team is better than it was a year ago in these same situations, and that's kind of clear, but they don't have much longer to keep doing this before the lemmings kind of fall off the cliff, right? Like it just they're teetering on the brink of losing whatever handle they have on the season, and playing well and getting an upset in Ames would go a long way to turning things around.
It definitely would. I mean, this week is really, really important for Baylor. I think, this doesn't feel like the make or break game. Like if you lose this game, there still is a path, and we'll continue to talk about a path to making a bowl game. I think as the season progresses, just because of the way the schedule sets up, it gets a lot easier over the second half of the season. But, you start looking at 2-4 and then saying you need to go 4-2 the rest of the way. it's kind of tough. And then like your next game, you have a bye week, and then you're on the road in Lubbock. And if you lose that game, you're 2-5, and then you start worrying about, the snowball effect that may have. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, we can talk about the morale of the team being good. We can talk about, Dave Aranda's mentioned that there's momentum in the locker room, even after the 2-3 start. He's talked about how, the players view this as a much more talented team than their record states. And I think most people who are reasonable would agree with that and say, maybe not the BYU game because they just started so bad, but they absolutely should have won the Colorado game. No question. They probably win that game 99 out of 100 times, and they didn't. They weren't able to get that last play, and that's become a reoccurring theme. I know Colt Barber wrote a great article about it on our site. Just, you got to win the plays that matter, and that requires you playing a full 4 quarters. And Baylor has not done that at all this season.
Yeah, Matt Campbell brought up they've been fantastic in the second half, but the game doesn't start then. Like that's what they have to realize, and they are. Because of that, they're wasting some good statistics and some good numbers. For example, Sawyer Robertson, since he's been the quarterback, second highest QBR in the Big 12 right now. They're wasting that stat because they can't get going early. So, and especially in Ames, you need to get going early, don't you?
You do. I heard an amazing stat actually on QBR. I think it might have been on the 10-12 podcast where they went through the top 5 guys in QBR, and it was really shocking. Obviously Sawyer is number 2, but I'm pretty sure, guys like Garrett Green and Alan Bowman and Josh Hoover were the other guys kind of on that list, which isn't, I don't think, the normal names that you would point to. Like Shedeur Sanders wasn't on that list. So yeah, just really interesting number there. But you're right. I mean, starting fast is key for Baylor. And honestly, outside of the Tarleton State game and the Colorado game, they really have not started fast on both sides of the ball. The Air Force game, they were pretty mediocre. They kept fumbling the football. So you can't really put that together as a full performance. And then, the Colorado game, you play a great 4 quarters, honestly. Like, I think you could say, wow, those 4 quarters were awesome, but it's that 1 second, that one play at the end of the game that is really all that matters. You got to be able to win games, especially at this stage in Dave Aranda's tenure. They got to win these games. They got to find a way to close out these close games. And they haven't been able to do that. In order to win in the Big 12, you have to win close games. That's what it's going to come down to. And that's honestly what this season is probably going to come down to. And I even think this game in Ames, it could be pretty close, but it's hard to have a lot of faith in Baylor actually being able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, they're playing a team in Iowa State that is not spectacular. They're not lighted up kind of a team, but they are the absolute picture of efficiency. That's what they are. And that's where they kind of get you, is that they don't beat themselves at all, and they just take what they're given until the breaking point. What does Baylor have to do to put Iowa State behind the 8 ball in this game?
That's the tricky part, right? Because you were talking, a little bit about Iowa State. I think the biggest thing for me when I think about Iowa State is they very much take on, the identity of their head football coach, and they have a culture, and it's been established on both sides of the ball. They have a lot of continuity in that regard, and that's what makes them so solid every year. The years that they've been really good, they've had a lot of talent with that. The years that they've just been okay, they just don't quite have the talent, but they still have the culture. And that allows you to kind of overcome some of those things and not have the bottom fall out. And so with this team, I think you look at them and they have some really good players. Abu Sama, great running back. Jaden Higgins, awesome wide receiver, probably in my eyes, one of the top 3 to 5 wide receivers in the Big 12. And then Jalen Knoll, who's a veteran, who's been there a long time, has really good numbers this year. He'll beat you deep. He'll beat you in the short game. Really tough guy to guard, and then good tight end play to go along with Rocco Becht. And so, yeah, I think when you look at them, you're not going to be like, oh, blown away by what they've done, but it's just being steady, consistent, taking the air out of the football, moving the chains, and not allowing you to score points in the red zone. That's kind of been their recipe for success. So I think for Baylor to have a chance in this game, they're going to have to hit on some explosive plays. most likely in the passing game. Even though this is an Iowa State defense that's really, really good against the pass, currently ranked the #1 pass efficiency defense in the country, but they have given up some explosive plays. So when you get opportunities like this past week, when you got Monterey Baldwin running down the field, or the Colorado game, you got Ashton Hawkins running open down the field, you have to hit those plays because you're not going to get many opportunities against this defense to capitalize on those. And then on the other end of things, to make them uncomfortable, I think it's going to come down to pretty simply a couple things: stopping the run, and then the pass rush making an impact. And getting a guy like Steve Linton back, probably getting Garmin Randolph back, I think that will go a long way to helping that. But first and foremost, you got to stop the run so that you put Rocco back in, more 3rd and 6 type situations where your pass rush can actually have an impact.
What do you see as the style that this game takes? With being up there in Ames, Baylor has classically not played great in Ames historically. Whether Iowa State's been good or bad, whether they've been good or bad, it's just a tough place for them historically to be, and that's true for everybody, but Baylor in particular has suffered some of the most, like the ones where, especially some of those times where it could have been a momentum game for them. They lose in Iowa State and it just doesn't get back on the track. Or, we had Ahmad Dixon on the show yesterday. They had that one game at Iowa State that we thought kind of ended that season, and then all of a sudden they come back and win the Holiday Bowl, just destroying UCLA that year, and that was the game that found them. How do you see the style of this game going?
Right. Dave Aranda's been pretty competitive when he's gone to Ames with most of his teams. They've been pretty competitive. I think that, in general, I think when I first looked at this game, I was kind of thinking that this would be a low scoring type game, both defenses kind of dictating pace. And I still think that's where I'm at. The over-under, I think, is at 44.5. I currently have it as a 40-point total at the moment. And so I do think it's going to be under, and I think both these defenses are going to play well. But, I thought that in the BYU game as well. And then that ended up being, kind of a shootout just because of what happened in the first half. And so things could get a little funky. I could see that. Maybe Iowa State opens up their offense a little bit, takes more shots, plays a little faster than they have played so far this year, as I believe they haven't really shown everything that they probably have in store because they've really only played one competitive game against Iowa. And so I think we might see some differences there. And if that does happen, that could lead to some more points. That could lead to a higher scoring outcome. But in general, I think Baylor probably wants to play this game low scoring. And I think Iowa State does as well. I think that's where these two teams probably feel most comfortable. So we'll see. We'll see how that kind of unfolds. I'm very curious about it, though, because I think both these offenses have intriguing pieces that could lead to some points. But I also think they're both so built on the defensive side. And so far this year, both have shown, a lot of strength in that regard. Baylor a little more inconsistently against a harder schedule, whereas Iowa State has been, really solid on defense all year, like borderline elite, even though I don't think they've played a great schedule up to this point.
Obviously, there's going to be some questions around Dave Aranda right now and his job security because they're 2-4, and it hasn't gone well, and it feels at times like a repeat of things that have gone on in the past. But the recruiting has ticked up in the last year. Have you seen any of that affecting them at least right now, or do you think that things would have to get worse before that tide that they have in recruiting and NIL and all that at least slows until a decision is made on who the coach is?
So they have a really good recruiting class right now, and they have a lot of really high-end guys, 4-star type guys that are going to get recruited by other schools. So naturally, you're going to have some battles as the season progresses, which, they planned on. That's not anything new. Not really. That doesn't really have an impact on how this season has gone. It's just more so that's just natural, right? When you have highly rated guys, other schools are still going to come after them and offer them. Caleb Burns is the perfect example, as he's picked up, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and Oregon all in the last month. Like, it's going to be a battle to keep someone like that. But I think in general, this staff has done a really good job recruiting, and they've built these really good relationships. And the thing I keep hearing from recruits, commits, pretty much anyone that has interest in Baylor, is that they can see how much they've improved this year, and that's really intriguing. And on the other side of that, the facility is the other part where these guys are coming to visit and they're getting to see this brand new facility and envisioning themselves, being able to grow and develop there, and seeing you go to these other schools and you look at their facilities and they're like, oh, it doesn't really match up to what Baylor has now. And so that's become a real recruiting tool, especially since it's brand new, just opened. They're getting to show that off a lot. And so, yeah, I think those few things have been kind of reoccurring. And so it's unfortunate that you say, all these improvements have been made, but, the record hasn't changed, which, casts doubt into whether Dave Aranda is going to be back next year. Because if there wasn't any doubt about it, if Baylor was sitting here at, 3-2 or 4-1, I think there'd be a lot less doubt about, whether he would be back at the end of the year, just because I think there's winnable games the rest of the schedule. But because of where they're at and the fact that they just haven't been able to come through in these close games, there is some doubt there. And that is definitely something that I think the staff is going to have to battle throughout this season, especially if things do go even more sideways, because, if they do lose Dave Aranda, I do believe they're going to lose a lot of this recruiting class. I think that's a pretty natural expectation.
And there's the rub right there, Grayson, for everybody who's got emotions about this. Like it is interesting when it comes to things like this, that it is not just about right now. Right now is important, but there are mitigating factors, aren't there?
There are. And, it's one of those things, Paul. I mean, you can talk about like you have to move on from a head coach because you're not winning. And, in large part, I agree with that. But in today's day and age, like the money matters like a lot. And so if you're, spending money, to buy out a coach instead of spending money on NIL to support your program, it's like, okay, what's the balance there between, having, maybe a different coach or having a better roster potentially? That's kind of where you're also trying to play with these things and figure it out. And the recruiting side of things, obviously you bring in a new coach. It's not only going to be hard to keep the recruiting class, but also, that coach isn't going to have a ton of time to try to put together a recruiting class, and, going to have to hit the transfer portal a lot and take a lot of risks there and take a lot of shots there to put together a competitive roster. And that's the hard part, right? I think ultimately they still have to win games. That's first and foremost. You can't make this decision just based on those factors that I mentioned. I think they're a part of it, but I do think you got to get to a certain amount of wins, or at least a certain amount of competitiveness. And so if they're playing like this all year and they lose a few more coin flip games and they win a few coin flip games, and you sit at the end of the year and they're 5-7, but they've been competitive all year and have, won some games that they need to win, like maybe they beat TCU at home or something along those lines, and you get to 5-7, I think that's where, there's probably going to be a real conversation that has to be had on what to do and what matters most and what direction this program needs to go. But I still believe if they get to 6 wins, I would find it hard to believe that you would let go of Dave Aranda with all the momentum that they put together on the recruiting trail.
Grayson Grundhafer, SicEm365.com. Grayson, we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, that's Grayson Grundhafer, SicEm365.com. We've got so much more coming your way, including Peyton Soysher rankings right now. Go ahead and start dropping those picks in the chat of who you want him to look up rankings-wise. Drop them right now. We'll throw them onto Peyton, and he will run them through the machine, and we'll get those. That's all coming up on 365 Sports.
The Baylor Club. Memberships available at the Baylor Club with exclusive perks available also as a member. Special events to premium dining. Don't miss out. Sign up today. You can call Skylar at 254-710-8073 to join now. Private events. We host our annual Academic All-Stars team honoring great student athletes in Central Texas at the Baylor Club. They have you covered with luxurious spaces, customized catering. Book your next big day at the Baylor Club. Reach out to Taylor or Sarah at the Baylor Club. Also dining. Craving a dining experience that's a cut above? The Baylor Club serves up gourmet meals with a view of McLean Stadium. Reserve your table now by contacting the Baylor Club. They have absolutely phenomenal chefs for you to create the perfect cuisine. Game day celebrations, tailgating at the HEB tailgate, game days and game night like tomorrow night against Air Force, McLean Stadium, alumni gatherings to game day festivities. The Baylor Club is your home for everything green and gold. Sic 'em Bears. For more information, visit BaylorClub.com. The Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium in Waco.
Announcing Genco's Car Hugger Special. Right now, refinance your auto loan at Genco and get 3 months of no car payments. Plus, your loan will be automatically entered for a chance to win your next 3 car payments on us. Enjoy 5.19% for 48 months and then skip your payments until 2025. Subject to credit approval and membership eligibility. For more information, go to GencoFCU.org. Member NCUA.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
Well, it is a Smokeless Friday, so it's just me. But Peyton Soysher of RankingsRightNow.com joins us here. But Peyton, before we get into the rankings, I'm glad that you're here to hear to throw your 2 cents into this. The most Miami story ever.
Okay.
This is the most Miami recruiting story ever, and it comes from Clinton Portis. So let me check the source here. I saw this on College Sports Only. I'm not sure where he said this, podcast or something. So Garrett, feel free to chime in on this as well.
Okay.
My third visit, I go to Miami, and we're in the strip club, Portis said. You know, we got dancers coming, and I got a dancer on me, and this MF look at me and say, "Are you coming?" To which Portis replied, "Yes." I shook my head yes, tilted my head back, eyes rolled back, and that's the last thing I remember. That is the last thing he remembers. But, and the author says, you'll pardon the pun, not the only climax of the evening. And I go to breakfast, I get on the elevator, I'm hungover, and bing, the door opens. One of the coaches walks in and says, "Oh, man, congratulations, we heard you committed last night." I said, "Huh?" We go down one more floor. The next coach gets on and says, "Oh, man, congratulations. We're so excited you're here," Portis said. Portis said it took him a few attaboys from the coaches to figure out he had committed to the U. And it wasn't Miami. It was the lap dance, Portis said. There will never be a more Miami story than that.
No, that's the epitome of Miami stories. Yes.
Absolutely. And he was on that team. Holy cow. What a ridiculous story.
Yeah, he's had some crazy ones, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even with the Broncos, I think he had some. He was with the Broncos. Yeah. He's had some very interesting things to say over the years.
Yes. He is let me see where he's from. I think, if I'm remembering right, he's also from a region of Florida that's like kind of rural. So he's from Mississippi. Okay, so he's from Mississippi. So like, this is a Mississippi kid down in big time Miami. Like you can see this all like
this is different. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Peyton, last week we talked about Alabama and Georgia and what happens if one team blows the other one out. For the first half of that game, I was at the SMU FSU game. I was about to text you and say, like, we might have our scenario right here on this. Now, Alabama is number one in one of the polls. They're not in the other. But what did you think when that was going on last week?
So, it was more of where I thought Georgia was going to land. That was the question was, okay, Alabama probably, if not clearly, is going to take the number one slot. Where is Georgia going to land in all of this? And, you just take your eyes off of it for a minute. It's becoming a little bit lopsided. And then it got like the greatest fourth quarter ever. Like it was just so much fun and so amazing. So when we went over our predictions last weekend, in the scenario where Alabama won, we said Alabama was going to be the number one team, and Georgia was going to fall down to 9. Now that changed which is the cool thing about rankings right now, is that it's real time. Ole Miss loses earlier in the day. So that opens a slot up, right? Everyone can kind of shift up in the rankings a little bit. So now that moves to 8. And I'm thinking, that might be the perfect spot for them, right? They're clearly getting outplayed. This is way different than everything else. And then by the end of the game, I thought, I don't know where Georgia's going to be anymore. Will Georgia be 2? Will Georgia be 9? Will there be 8? So, I was glad that from the first point that we talked about was, hey, the winner of this game is going to be the number one seed in the AP poll. And that's what happened. And that's really cool what this algorithm can bring. But I think that last fourth quarter really changed a lot of perceptions of how we even view that game. Even if you look at social media after, it was like, that was the most amazing game ever. Was it the most amazing game ever? Was it the greatest fourth quarter ever? Right? Like in our newsletter that I published after the game was, if you look at what rankings right now is trying to accomplish, it's trying to just look at a box score and say, how do people react to that? There's no way to tell the whole story to an algorithm of what happened in that game. And if you would have asked a lot of the AP poll at halftime, give us your rankings right now, I don't think that they're putting Georgia at 4 or 5. I really don't. I think they're saying that's a bottom top 10 tier. So I'd be interested in what you think their ranking would have been had it ended up being a big blowout.
Yeah, it was such a ridiculously intriguing game, and we do have some teams already in the chat to go through.
Yeah, let's do it
later on. Like let's get to a couple of things. Yeah, but want to get to some of the brass tacks of this. The best game this week as far as ranked is A&M and Mizzou.
Yes.
With the prediction, you have A&M winning 25-23, which falls within the spread of that game there. And so A&M wins 25-23. They shoot up the rankings, 14 spots to number 11, and Mizzou drops 7 spots to number 16. And then we're starting to see everybody's with the loss or the undefeated teams that people don't like as much because of their strength of schedule. Right. Is this where this gets we can start to see this really get interesting and we can see some crazy movement, especially based on what we saw, Ole Miss lost last week and they took a tumble like you just mentioned.
I think the Mizzou one makes the most sense out of those two scenarios of A&M shooting way up and Mizzou dropping 7 slots. If we look back to last week, the algorithm had Louisville out after the loss to Notre Dame. And so they end up losing to Notre Dame. They drop a little bit, right? They drop 7 slots, but they don't drop out of the AP poll like the algorithm predicted. So that middle grouping is really interesting to try and focus in on. And that's where a lot of those big swings happen. If you look at the top 10, the movements were all on. We were perfect on where we predicted Ole Miss to drop. We were almost perfect on Utah. We had Utah dropping to 19. They slap at 18. So those top tier schools, it's been very, very accurate. It's in the middle of the pack and in the later 20 to 25 range that we're seeing a little bit more aggressive swings from the model. Now, the model is trying to compensate all of the different things that have gone on in the past and try and come up with what's called the best fit. Right now, it thinks the best fit is to put A&M up into that 11 spot. I think they'll be closer into that, maybe the 15 range. I think it would be a significant win. Regardless of how you want to put it, Mizzou's a top 10 team. They're voted as a top 10 team. They've stayed there almost the entire season. So right now, I would say that drop to 16 for Mizzou seems right. That A&M one might be a little bit too aggressive for my human way that I'm deciphering this. But, sometimes these algorithms might know a little bit more and take things, take some bias out that we might be using as fans.
Yeah, I never because if A&M is 11 and Notre Dame is at 14, well, Notre Dame beat them at their place.
Right.
And that to me is where it never it sits well where yes, I understand that Notre Dame lost a nail biter to Northern Illinois. I get that. But A&M lost to Notre Dame. So let's just make sure that they could be right next to each other, but Notre Dame has to be before them in the rankings because they have the same record and A&M's losses to them.
Well, you're using a very fatal flaw, which is called logic, right? You have to be very careful about that. So we've seen in the past, and in 2021, Michigan State had beaten Michigan. Kenneth Walker III ran for 5 touchdowns, right? Next week, they lose to Purdue. In the following rankings after that, Michigan, I think, was ranked 6. Michigan State's ranked 7. And everyone said, wait a minute. Didn't Michigan just lose to Michigan State? How could they be flipped in the rankings so soon? So when it comes to a lot of these types of things, sometimes logic has to go out the window. I talk to a lot of fans on social media, which have very similar things to say, well, they should move up in the rankings because it was a close game. That's not how this works. A lot of South Carolina fans love to say that. Well, Kentucky just beat Ole Miss. We beat Kentucky. So that means we're a ranked team. Not necessarily. It's a whole conundrum of things that are going on. So although you're right to say that A&M lost to Notre Dame, therefore you got to think that Notre Dame would be ahead of them. That's not how this works sometimes. It's very recent bias. These voters are really going after what they know of right now. And that's one of the cool things about building this algorithm and not just doing a power ranking. It's just trying to actually interpret what is going on in the brains of these people, of these polls that we follow, right? You might not agree with the poll, but it's what we believe they will vote based on how they voted in the past.
Okay, so let's get into some requests.
Let's do it.
DJ Payton now spinning it on the 1s and 2s. The first one was for Army and Navy, who you have this week. You've already done this because they are both at the bottom of the rankings. They're right there. You have them both winning and moving up a couple of spots.
Mm-hmm. I think that here we go. Let me just log on in real quick. So for anyone who wants to do, it's free for everybody. Let's do, oops, mess it up. Sorry for not being more prepared. I thought it was already set up, ready to go. So for that Army and Navy game, or for Army and Navy, we've been the algorithm loves them, by the way. Every week, drives me a little bit crazy, but every week they put them 24-25. Every single week. They're saying at some point they got to break through. So, we'll see. We'll see exactly what they want to do with those rankings. But yes, as of right now, we have those 24-25 every single week. That's the main focal point. Did you say that you wanted to do a score with them or no?
Yeah. Let's. Their Army's playing Tulsa. Navy's playing Air Force.
Okay, great. So Army is playing Tulsa. Let's go ahead and open it up to all teams since they're not ranked in the top 25. Army and Tulsa, what are we thinking?
You have the score here on the thing. It's 30. Let's just get 31-19 so people can see it in real time, like how it predicted out.
Oh, okay, great. So that is the score, 31-19. And if we look at right here with the top rankings, some other ones that are right here. UNLV, Arizona, it just missed the AP poll last weekend, but they're sitting right there at that 20 or the 24 spot right now. If we change, I don't think even if we change that score of that Army score, even if you make it something like 50-0. Let's see if it changes the opinions at it. We'll run the simulation and see what ends up happening. But it looks like they move up one more slot. So that's kind of the real prediction right there. But if you look at the rest of these schedules and specifically, and don't mean to jump topic too quickly, but one of the biggest ones right now that we're seeing is James Madison has like real clarity moving forward. If you look at all of James Madison had a couple votes in the AP poll last week. They're really, really favored in our college football algorithm. So if we go ahead and look at the college football selection committee instead, I know they haven't released any rankings, but we still have an algorithm that we've reverse engineered how they would typically vote. Right now, James Madison after this weekend is sitting in the top 25. So that week 10 poll that's coming up in a few weeks that everyone's kind of looking forward to because they're the real rankings that really matter. James Madison's in that top 25, and they don't have a single game, according to ESPN, with less than a 69% chance of winning. So they have very, very good team of five, or like outside of the power conferences of making one of those playoff games right now.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Let me ask you about, and maybe I would assume the same thing as Army. Like, there's not much that they can do to like bust through, to get to like 12th or something. If they blew out Air Force, SMU and Louisville. Louisville favored to win, but what happens if SMU wins that one? Let's just say 31-24. Because SMU has the one loss to BYU, who's now ranked. They're undefeated, and they're on a hot streak, blowing out the last two teams they played.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and let's go to that Louisville game. So we have SMU and Louisville. Let's just flip the score. How about that? 31-25.
Okay.
So here we go. We'll go ahead and run the simulation. We're running it on the AP poll rankings simulation. So as of right now, it definitely knocks Louisville out. That'd be back-to-back losses. I don't believe I see SMU in here. So let's go ahead and expand this out to all teams. And SMU right there, up to 39. So they're now picking in. SMU is another really great example. By the way, I actually ran these predictions for the rest of the season. So not just looking at week 7, but for the rest of the year using the college football. And SMU is a very interesting use case. So this is the cumulative percentage of their likelihood of being ranked X through week 14. So not going into the conference championship, but just saying through the regular season, where do we think that they'll be ranked? And let's go ahead and run this up a little bit more. So for SMU specifically, if we're looking at the top 12 teams, there's an 18% chance that SMU, through our simulation, cracks that top 12 team. So going to a top 12 team going into the conference championship. So that's a big make or break scenario. So even if you want to say, rank 15, 16, 17, one of these, hey, have a big win that might put you finally in, we're looking at roughly about a 30% chance that they're going to be in a contender spot going into that that final championship weekend.
God, that's interesting. Like, again, that BYU loss really kind of put a dent in them. But if BYU continues to be better,
it makes their resume look better. Yeah,
it makes that BYU loss really, because I think people had a lot of positive vibes around SMU, and they probably still should. But this is going to be a test. This is, obviously they're in a tougher conference now. So,
correct.
Louisville is tougher. They do have a pretty favorable ACC schedule for year one, but that's really interesting. Do you see any potential trap games this week on the schedule? Because this is one of those weeks where it looks like everything should go chalk. There's not much like outside of that A&M game, but there's some traps in here, right?
Oh, for sure. There's always a couple. Tennessee and Arkansas, people are not like Arkansas's record doesn't reflect that the games that they lose are really close. And that's a competitive team right there. So on the road in Arkansas, is this a sleep week for Tennessee, right? Maybe they don't come out all guns firing. I don't know. I don't see Auburn and Georgia really being a trap game. The other one is Ole Miss and South Carolina. Ole Miss just had a shaky one at home. Now they have to play another really tough opponent with a really good schedule. And, as we walked through on the What If Simulator last week, if they beat LSU, they're probably a top 15, top 18 team right now. So if this was 12 versus 18, I think a lot more eyes would be focused over here. That seems like a trap game to me right there for Ole Miss. That's going from like rank of, what were they, 5 or 6 all the way down to the low 20s maybe. So that's the biggest one right now. UW is projected to beat Michigan as of right now, according to Vegas. ESPN FBI has a little bit favored towards Michigan, but that's a big drop that you're seeing right there. So I would say these two right here are the big ones that people should pay a little bit more attention to and say that might be something that could really change the trajectory of both of those seasons going into getting close to playoff time.
Peyton Soysher, rankingsrightnow.com. Peyton, I love it every week. I feel smarter. I never had to take statistics. Or anything like this. I skated through math. Like I'm not a math guy. I like to talk to math guys.
If you think I voluntarily and excitedly walked into statistics class for the first time, you'd be completely wrong. So yeah, you just kind of stumble into it and you think, these are like, I didn't know I could solve a problem like this. So I'm happy to be the statistics fill-in though, if you ever need it.
Yeah. What was your calculator? You have like TA82?
So what's really interesting is I had 2 calculators. One was the brick that you would get for $3 at Target, right?
Yeah.
And that was to make sure that you actually knew the math. And so they didn't want anyone with advanced statistics or whatever. I majored in actuarial mathematics, which is the study of risk.
Yeah.
And so I was like a whiz on like how to work the brick calculator to like save things. And I felt way smarter with the brick calculator. And then I had like the TI-89 calculator with like the fun graphs and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And when the teacher's not looking, you're playing with the bricks and whatnot. So that's what we were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Peyton, thanks so much. Go to rankingsrightnow.com, register, and fall into a rankings like it's just a rabbit hole. You can do it for every team in the country if you want to and predict on the way out. So it is great stuff. Peyton, we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate your time.
All right. Love having Peyton on the show every week. When we come back, Evan Abrams, Action Network, then Josh Neighbors on the show, and then the top 5, which I think we had a nice little themed top 5 this week. Like everything was good. So everything wraps up in a bow very nicely today. So all that's coming up. This is 365 Sports.
It's Jeep Adventure Days at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive off in a new 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland with $13,000 off, or the 2024 Jeep Gladiator Sport with huge 18% off MSRP. Need more? How about a new Jeep Compass? $9,000 off, or the stunning Wagoneer L, $8,300 off dealer discount. Also, models that come with 0% financing for 36 months. Get your adventure started right now. Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Also, drive home a 2024 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon Hybrid. Save $13,000. Plus, you may qualify for $7,500 in federal tax credit. And don't miss out on the powerful deal. Visit Allen Samuels today, and first responders get an extra $500 in bonus cash. Ted Teague, the general manager and CEO, a fantastic staff to help you test drive the vehicle or what you want to look at to make sure that's what you want, and they will make sure they get what you want so you can drive it home. Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Get ready, Baylor fans. The ultimate game weekend experience awaits you at the Baylor Club. Kick off your weekend with our Friday Night Live pep rally. With live entertainment and special appearances from the Baylor Spirit Squad, it's the perfect way to start your game weekend with a roar. On Saturdays, don't miss our Knox Hall tailgate. Enjoy delicious food, ice-cold drinks, and great company as you gear up for the big game. And after the weekend's excitement, wrap it all up with our famous Bear brunches on Sundays. Don't wait. Make your game weekends legendary with a Baylor Club membership today.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
65 Sports, Evan Abrams, who we haven't seen for a couple weeks. 1 week because we didn't have anything scheduled. Then last week he had flight drama. So, look, there is... I remember Louis C.K. had a bit about like how it's a story in this country when you have flight drama, but really people who have not experienced a hurricane day in Florida don't understand like when you add that on top of flight drama, it's really, really stressful. And I know Helene, it was just absolutely devastating all across the region. You were not in an area that was really hard hit, but even still, everybody in Florida, whenever there's a hurricane hitting any part of the state, is affected in some way.
Yeah, hurricane, tropical rain, whatever it is, not always the easiest, but everyone's safe, everyone's good. Obviously terrible things, but glad we got out, and now brand new week. Talk about the slate. I mean, listen, the funny thing is this slate definitely doesn't look like next week's slate, but usually when the slate doesn't look this good, chaos ensues, and you've got I think it's 19 or 20 home underdogs. So I expect chaos this week.
Yeah, I just saw a tweet from a friend of ours, Dave Bartu, who does College Football Matrix, and he talked about that home field advantage is kind of a bit of a construct, especially in the SEC because you've got so many good teams in there. In response to, I think, an SEC podcaster saying like A&M doesn't have a top 5 home field advantage, and statistically, really, if you look at it in the SEC, I mean, it's a tough place to play, but it hasn't paid off for the Aggies in winning that league yet. So how do you go about gauging a legitimate home field advantage, especially when you said 19 home dogs this week?
Home field advantage, I think, kind of across college football and the NFL has just been negated over the years. And there's tons of data out there to kind of present the fact that road underdogs are usually the right side to bet in these games, just because I think the casual bettor does just see Texas A&M or the Seattle Seahawks or whatever you may be, your home field environment, and kind of just assumes way too much on the other side, and there ends up being value. Maybe a line that should have been 2.5 might be 3.5, et cetera. And especially in 2024 and moving on, travel is even easier, even though we just had the conversation where it was a little bit difficult. It actually is much easier for many people. And I'll tell you one just tidbit. Ready? In the handicapping world, in the life that I've lived, I've always been told this note. and it's players and professional athletes tend to play better and freer when they're on the road versus when they're at home. More obligations, more crap, more different stuff. So I tend to have that in the back of my brain sometimes.
Yeah, I think where the home field advantage genuinely comes in, like where it really gets you is if you are in a place like Stillwater, who hasn't had a great one this year, but like you're in Stillwater, you're in Lincoln, you're in Gainesville, you're in one of these places that the fans really know what they're doing, and they really like, if you're in Fog Allen Fieldhouse, like a place like that, where when the fans smell blood in the water, it gets way louder and your stress meets their emotion, that's where it hits. And it usually hits late, right? Like, so in a game where you think you might have it and it starts to slip away, when all of a sudden you get stressed and can't hear yourself think, that's when it happens. But if it's a normal game that goes like this, like most games do now in the parody world we live in, I really don't think it's that big of a deal.
Preparation and experience are usually what you need on the other side of hectic environments.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, usually quarterbacks who have been there before, who have had the starts, do better jobs. It's easy said than done, but.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk about some of the games this week. Mizzou versus A&M is an interesting one. A&M kind of hanging on to the bottom rung of the rankings, but they don't look great, but they look good. They look they're adaptable, which they weren't before. They have a lot more they've got a better culture, chemistry now under Mike Elko, and those things are paying off because they had the athletes. Like, they had good players.
No question.
They just weren't systematically right. And Mike Elko has kind of installed that. Now, they're probably a year or two away from really contending in that league, but Mizzou hasn't really looked like a top 10 team yet. Like, they're good. We know they're good, but they've got to start beating somebody. This is their opportunity. How do you see this one, and why? Like, they've got a nice little, they're A&M's one of those home dogs. Like, yeah. But where do you see this kind of moving, and where the good bets are?
No, so actually in this one, A&M, the look ahead was -4.5 for A&M. It's now 2.5 for A&M. So A&M is the favorite, with Mizzou being a lower ranked team on the road. I think many people would kind of look in this and say Tigers, and that's where the market is. Tickets, money, a lot of action on Missouri in this one. The things I want to look at is, Missouri's not going to be looking ahead. I believe they're on the road against UMass next week. So if anything, this is the game they're going to be focused on. You assume they get their best performance. But just look at a few notes and ideas behind the concept of this game. So teams coming off a neutral site matchup, which, A&M was in a battle last week, 63% win percentage in their next game, 89-23 straight up. So pretty good when that game is played at home. So home field advantage off neutral, pretty good. Now you look at the fact you've got Missouri on the road in this one, and they're getting points. Normally, most people would look to that side. Top 10 teams listed at underdogs versus teams outside the top 10, just 5-14 straight up, 8-11 against the number over the last 4 seasons. So most people say one way, tends up going the other. And then the last one I'll give you here, favorites and ranked matchups. 57% in the last 5 seasons. I think everyone's going to want to take Missouri in this one. I like Texas A&M under that field goal, but under the field goal is kind of key, obviously, in this circumstance. 2 has become a bigger key number in the NFL. 3 still king in college football. So under that field goal is good for me.
I'm very curious to see how it plays out, and if is Mizzou getting too much credit? Is A&M not getting enough, or is it or is it flipped?
The line's really intriguing, right? Because I think most people would think the opposite and assume A&M based off how they played this year. But market's kind of telling you something here. So we're going to go with the flow.
Yeah, absolutely. I was at SMU FSU last week, and that is a game that blew the number away. Yeah. Although it's not like some of that, like sometimes I feel like there's a number and they're just being nice. Like 5.5 with the way that DJU's been playing just seemed like, well, we don't want to completely break
their reputation line. It was a
the reputation line. Yeah. But SMU had just blown out TCU. They've got Kevin Jennings at quarterback. They're feeling good about themselves. But now they go against Louisville. They're off 2 big wins. Louisville's off a loss, but it is at Louisville. So, like, there is something. Second week now back in the ACC, and kind of a bigger number here than I thought.
I don't have as much of a feel as some other ones with this one, but the market is interesting. So the look ahead was 11, and look ahead, I say that was the first posted line on Game of the Year's look ahead. Now down to 6.5, so under that key number. To me, Louisville's offense just been unstoppable, as you said it, with its best competition probably being Notre Dame's defense, which probably a little bit better than we expected. But SMU's offense has been effective over the last few weeks, but I just don't see it as quite as good as Louisville's. I would probably play Louisville under that 6.5. I would really like 5.5. I don't think it's ever going to get there, since I would assume it's going to go the other direction. I just don't have a feel here because, again, coming off playing at FSU team, I don't necessarily know what we saw is actually legit. And Louisville's, both sides of the ball, they've looked much better than I expected. So my gut says Louisville, but kind of a tough, let's call it pregame bet. I might want to see a few drives.
Yeah. FSU and Clemson this week, 14.5, which I think is too low. but that's from a broken FSU fan who had to watch his team get cooked and eaten like right in front of him. So, but yeah, that's how things have changed in just a week, And like, I mean, Clemson's better than SMU, but like, but one of those things like, this was not a 5.5 point dog really last week, and it's probably not a 14.5 one this week. Like, you have to be reasonable. I get when you're setting these lines, but yeah, I wouldn't touch anywhere near FSU this year on anything.
The board just for reference, since you did say that, the look ahead there was 5.
Yeah.
So if that wants to give you any perspective on where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Rutgers and Nebraska is one that I don't think anybody would have looked at the beginning of the year and be like, man, that's going to be a doozy. It looks like it's going to be a doozy. Both these teams are good. They have similar styles. Greg Schiano and Matt Rule, both from the Northeast, kind of like that kind of style of coaching. And this is one where for either team, this is kind of like a boost game for the next few weeks, and it's going to be tight. This one's going to come down to maybe some points at the end, I would think, stylistically, the way these two teams play.
You nailed it. I think whoever actually wins this game sees a humongous amount of momentum. And just the fact that we kind of expect both these teams to lose and one of them has to end up winning this one. So it's a funny set of circumstances, but let's talk about the market in the game for a second. So look ahead was Nebraska 5.5, now up to 7. Now I go into this game, at least last week, right? Last week's results happen, and I say to myself, I want to bet Nebraska. Rutgers off an extremely emotional game, like a win that looked like it electrified the school itself. And usually you want to go the other way in this circumstance, but there's one thing that's negating everything, and it's the wind in this game. So looking at some of our Action Labs data, we're looking like 15, 20 mile an hour winds potentially in this one, at least at kickoff. So I'm interested, and I think a lot of other people are because it's moving fast, at under 41.5. I see it 41 in some spots, and if the wind holds, it's going to die down. The one stat kind of overlaying Nebraska over the last few years, 8-31 in one possession games. So since 2018, if this one is tight, I do see Rutgers trying to find a way, but with the wind, I think Rule, I think Schiano, it's going to be a little conservative, and huge wind games. When there's lots of wind, it's like 57% over 1,200 game sample size in our database, 57%. So I have to go with the under as long as that holds.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea on this one. Like, if somebody came and told me 40 points, I'd be like, oh man, 40. Like in this one, I know it. If you look at their stats, 21-20 would make sense, but this game still feels, again, you throw the wind on top of that, the way that both these teams are going to be playing defense first, this feels like 17-16, honestly, to me. That's what it feels like to me.
I'll also say this. I usually don't talk about key numbers in college football because there's just too much chaos, but when you get that low, 41.5, things of that nature, those are key. So that's why I kind of I pinned in on that number.
A game in which both teams need a win really badly is West Virginia and Oklahoma State in the Big 12. It's in Morgantown, so that could mean something, could not, based on what we talked about earlier. Oklahoma State's reeling right now. They are reeling in a way that we didn't see last year, but we did see 2 years ago. They kind of ride this up and down thing in Gundy world. This one, I really like when I was trying to pick it earlier this week. I have like just picking the winner for our pick'em contest, which is just straight up like who's the winner. Couldn't like it took me 10 minutes to like figure out who this is.
This game's chaos. I'll give you 2 funny notes, though. So in the NFL world, we call October Kirktober, and Kirk Cousins did throw for 504 last night, so it worked out. In college football, we call it Gundy-tober because he, at least in our database, 46-25 against the spread in the month of October, usually ends up figuring out his teams a few games into the season. That's the best of, I think it's over 300 coaches in our database. And then you say to yourself, okay, large sample size, that's good. What have you done for me recently? 13-3 against the number of the last 5 years as well. So he tends to do this in this spot. So I think it's worth being said off the top that, that is something here. Now, I'll also give you one more note. Road conference dogs with extra rest, which is exactly what we're walking into here, just under 57% against the spread against those home teams on normal rest. So rest is nice, especially when you're hitting the road. Also, don't forget, Arkansas puts over 600 yards of offense in an unlucky loss in Stillwater. Trend says Gundy gets it right. I kind of like West Virginia in this one.
Okay, yeah. Again, but you said chaos. I can see the look on your face. You're like, oh, chaos. Like, yeah.
It goes both ways in this one. I expect some points on some level just because I think there's going to be silliness. Yeah. It's going to be that type of college football game, which, you're going to turn around. There's going to be points and you're not going to really remember how.
Yeah. All right. So this one, this has a lot of stakes for one guy, at least this week, and Billy Napier. Like if Billy Napier loses this game, it's very likely that he is not the coach on Sunday morning. And that this is the one that pushes him out the door, which is going to happen anyway. Like there's nothing he can do at this point. The way they've started, really short of a miracle, like that the Pope would have to call him about. But UCF is not well regarded. Like Gainesville, those fans look down on them. They think that this is not a game that they should lose, even though the last time they played in a bowl game, in the Gasparilla Bowl, UCF won that game. But UCF is coming off getting beaten pretty good by Colorado. They're going to Gainesville. They are the team that has looked better this year than Florida. But this is a huge game for them. It's a huge game for Billy Napier. What do the numbers tell you?
There's a different set of circumstances. So I think you nailed it on that. I'll just look at it like a Florida approach overall a little bit before we walk into the game. So line is sitting at just 1.5 right now as Florida being a home dog. If they do close as that home dog, it would be their 3rd game as a home underdog already this season, which would be the most for that school in over 40 years. So the way we're looking at Florida currently is nothing like the past. Now, I believe I even talked about this on this show a few weeks ago. UCF's run game has been absurd. It's come back a little bit since early season, but they've made 37 trips, UCF, into scoring position this year, only averaging 3.2 points per trip. They just haven't been able to finish, and it's been kind of embarrassing and really cost them a few games in that spot. I can't tell you to bet Florida because I just, at this point, I don't know what I'm going to get, but to me, Florida's the right side, but yuck.
Yeah. Yeah. That's maybe pick a better game.
Yeah.
If you're picking one game to put your money on this week, maybe not this one.
I mean, even to set it at 1.5, I don't even really think they know.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. You said, you sent me a couple this week. Service Academy games, Navy and Air Force this week. Is that bang the under or Navy's kind of scoring now. Air Force, we saw them a couple weeks ago here. This is a down year for Air Force. They lost a lot of guys off last year's team. It was really good. But Navy's up, Air Force down. Like, what do we see here?
Yeah, so this is the love of the gambling community. Just like Hawaii at midnight, Service Academy unders has been something that people have talked about now for years. I will say, just the blanket number, 50, 10, and 3 since 2003, Service Academy unders. So overall, been absurd, but I think the story of the actual under in itself and the story of the total is the total and where it's moved. So the look ahead was 38.5. it actually got as low as 34.5. Now it's back up to 37. You've seen absolutely a ton of action on both sides of this one. Just to give you an idea of how much action has been played. And not only that, Navy -10 on the line. So that's moved a lot as well. This is the 6th most bet game of any college football game this weekend on our slate for us in terms of our data. So a lot of action and a lot of people are interested in this one. And again, I think the trend and the fun of the total is kind of getting people to go into this one a little bit. I will give you a bet, and I kind of like Air Force. I like the points because I will give you a trend here. Underdogs, Service Academy games, 34-21-2 since 2005, done well almost consistently, and now you're getting double digits. I know Navy's looked ridiculous, but I think I would look to the dog in this one, and then you just got to watch the game to see what happens with the total.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Miami and Cal. Cal has not run the ball quite as well as I thought. Miami had an adventure last week, but this is an interesting matchup. Could be maybe a trap for Miami.
Yeah, I think a lot of people looking at this one, especially a trap after what we just saw last week, and that's kind of what I'm looking at. So Miami was lucky to stay undefeated, barely, probably should have lost the game based on a bunch of circumstances. But since 2015, just 8-11 straight up and 5-14 against the number. The game after a straight up win, but an ATS loss, right? So what those mean? High spreads, close games, close to getting upset. Usually tough to bounce back the next week. And then you kind of look at the travel. Miami's only played one game in either MST or PST time zones. That was in 2008 against this Cal team. They lost it. The result of the game doesn't matter. It's the fact that it's just an odd spot for them, coming off a really emotional win in a celebration that probably lasted a day or two. If anything, I would look to Cal, but the lines moved a little bit.
All right, 2 more things. The totals this year in college football, you said you have some interesting numbers on those.
Yeah, this is simple. So far this season, we've had 101 games with a total of 60 or more. Those games are 61-40 to the under. That's 60.4%. Last 5 years entering this year, unders have been above 500 in games with a total of 60 plus. They're 53% to the under by almost 2 points per game in almost a 300 game sample size. So I talked earlier in the season about like late night games potentially also having an advantage to the under. Overall, just higher totals, less scoring in some of these big market games. So something to look for. You got a few games above 60, so we'll see how it goes and can update.
All right, and one of our favorite players here, he's from Texas. We've had him on the show like 3 times, I want to say, Ashton Jeanty, who is, I think, finally going to break this stupid trend in the NFL of like running backs don't matter. Like, he's going to be one of maybe 3 taken to the first round this year. Probably the first one taken. He's got some fun props right now for the Blue Turfers.
Well, the projections of his going forward on a 12-game pace kind of tells you why the numbers look like this. He's projected for 250 carries, almost 2,600 yards. Obviously, he's averaging a first down per carry right now. He's looking at almost an average of pace of 40 touchdowns. Just the numbers are stupid, but it kind of tells you what we're looking at. So right now this week, he is minus 2,000 to score a touchdown. He was minus 3,500 earlier week. Now that is put up $3,500 to win 100 on him to get into the end zone, to be clear on what that means. He is minus 320 to score 2 touchdowns. His even money number is to score 3 at minus 105. I mean, so that is really where we are at with Ashton Jeanty. I will give you 2 more, which are just fun. He's minus 150 to score in the first quarter, and he is just plus 140 to score first. If you think about how crazy that is when you look at an NFL game and you're betting some of those first touchdown bets. This is not something we've ever seen, and I think it also has to do with Utah State. Boise's absolutely dominated them. It really hasn't been close. I believe they're like 17-3-1 against the number in their last 21 against them. It's been bad. So there's the projections, and there we go. But those numbers are crazy. You can get, I think, 10-1 on him not to score a touchdown this week.
That is so nuts that you have to go to 3 touchdowns to hit even money.
That is, yeah. You know what it is? It's like those hockey games later in the year where the guys, you get like -2.5 goals, or you see -3.5 in baseball and things like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we're at with this. You got to get that high to bet the other side, but it'll get you to watch the game or at least check the box score.
That's for sure. Evan Abrams, Action Network HQ. Go there. This is all good. Like this is a little speck of the information that you have, especially for. I was reading your NFL stuff today, and just like because this is a season in the NFL where overs are not going to hit a lot. Like that's why the running backs are going to be coming back. They've got to get those offenses moving again. So enjoy. You're going to Cincinnati this weekend to see the Bengals and Ravens. So those overs should hit on that one.
Hopefully. That total's come down, so hopefully I get a little offense.
Yeah, we'll see. Evan Abrams, Action Network HQ here with us on 365 Sports. We got more right after this.
I've had a lot of ailments. My goodness. Hey, this is David Smoke. I'm 65 years old, and I'm going to have some things break down. I work out still most every day. I can't run like I used to. My hip is bothering me, and I've had injections in my back. In fact, one back in April up in Dallas, and it worked, but it did not solve the problem. So I need to get another MRI of my lower back, my lower lumbar, and also at some point figure out, is that what is affecting me having this throbbing pain? And it's more often than I even admit in my right hip. Ideal MRI set me up with an MRI last week thanks to my doctor calling them and saying, this is what we need from your state-of-the-art imaging machines. So, Ideal MRI, $497 or less every single time. Dr. Rob Maxey and his ownership and partnership, they have done a phenomenal job. This saves you money, a bunch of money. The average is $1,100, and you don't pay anything more and sometimes less with IdealMRI.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Midway Athletics and UBO Business Services are two names that exude winning. From Midway's top Central Texas Star test scores to college-like extracurricular facilities and UBO Business Services industry-leading customer service scores, you can trust in these two winning programs. Best of luck to Coach Joe Gillespie and the Midway Panthers. And look at your sticker on your office equipment. If it does not say UBO, call Midway Class of 2020, Duff, Daxon, Dane, or Sean Hunt at 254-709-2101 or ubeo.com.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Bud Light. Enjoy the smooth, crisp taste of Bud Light beer. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
Welcome in at 365 Sports, Paul Catalina. Josh Neighbors, our friend from Big 12 Watch. Josh was in the North Park Mall last week where, surprisingly enough, there's no cell phone signals.
Not shocked. Not shocking.
They don't want you to look up how much this stuff actually costs.
No, they don't. Luckily for me, I got out of there. I got out of the weekend pretty cheap. my girlfriend was like, treat yourself. And I'm like, the trip is treating myself. And then I got like one shirt from TJ Maxx and then she left me alone. So we were good.
You went to the A&M Arkansas game last
I
night,
did.
right?
Yeah.
What was, that's the last one that's going to be at Jerry World, at least for the foreseeable future, which I think is a relief. I think they need to go back to home and home. But what was the vibe with that last one? And I know that your girlfriend is an Arkansas alum, another gut punch. They've not won that game all too often since they've been playing it there.
No. It's good they're going back to, because if you look at Arkansas's first 5 weeks, they played in Little Rock against UAPB. They played at Oklahoma State. They played in Fayetteville. They played at Auburn, and they played in Dallas. So they've been all over. They've really been a road show for most of the year so far. So it's good they're going to give that one back as a home game, as a road game. Just go to those venues and whatnot. It should be good. It was a close game. I wouldn't say it was a good game. After watching that game, I feel pretty good about my alma mater, Missouri, this week against A&M. A&M's front though is their best thing, so I'm interested to see if Missouri can block them up front. But Marcel Reed, at least not yet, not special. Not anything special at this point in time. Their offense pretty average, I would say. Defense, though,
he is to me right now. He just fits in that offense.
Yeah,
where they are.
Yeah,
and he can move the ball when they need to. He's athletic. He can make plays. Again, nothing all that great yet, but he fits. He just fits
competent
for what they need right now. Yeah,
he's competent. Yeah. Connor Wegman doesn't do a whole lot for me. So, and I think Mike Elko is a really good coach. And if Arkansas gets in a close game against a good coach, the good coach team usually wins.
Yeah.
They actually almost always win, at least for Sam Pittman.
Yeah. Let's get into the question of the week, Josh, which is what the bleep is going on in the Big 12. It is even more chaotic than we thought, because what we thought was kind of, okay, these are the teams that are good that will be able to kind of drive the ship. That's not necessarily been true, especially when it comes to Kansas. Kansas State's still good, but they've also taken a loss. Oklahoma State is right now in the midst of a waking nightmare of what's going on there. Utah and Cam Rising, who knows how bad his fingers hurt and when we're ever going to see that again. BYU's 5-0. Colorado might be good. Like all these things. I feel like we're in the upside down.
Yeah, I don't really know what to make of it. I mean, I think the Cam Rising injury is kind of the part that really makes this thing weird. Like, because I think if you go through each happening on their own, it's really not that odd. Like, they're not super odd, right? So Utah, getting smoked was weird. That was pretty odd. But like, we saw this last year, just the quarterback play mattered so much for them. And Bryson Barnes only had one good game last year, and they went 8-4. You look at Arizona, they're the flip side of that. Like they're kind of a two-man show on offense, and their defense has not been very good. So they played a pretty bad offense last week. I'm still not sure BYU's offense is good, but BYU, I think that's the one surprise is BYU's defense is very good. It appears BYU's defense is very, very good. Colorado can play you in some shootouts, and so it does make some sense that they're in some shootout-y games and that they are winning some of those games. But like when they played Nebraska, who's good up front, they got rolled over, right? So, but they are doing pretty well. I will give them that. Oklahoma State, not surprised to see teams keying on the run, and Bowman started off well, but then he turned back into Alan Bowman, which that shouldn't be surprising. Avery Johnson looks pretty young as a passer. Shouldn't be that surprising. So while the results kind of give you a topsy-turvy feel, like, and even Kansas, for example, I know it's not, it should look better than it does. Like Devin Neal's playing well, but Jalen Daniels looks like a guy who's missed a lot of time, and also it looks like they missed their offensive coordinator. So the results are upside down, but I think the reasonings behind the results are not surprising, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess so. I can see that.
What's the most surprising thing to you, Paul? What are you most?
I think Jalen Daniels not being good is the most surprising thing to me.
I agree,
because I didn't think the scheme could mess him up. Like, he's just, when we've seen him in the right scheme, he's fantastic. But he looks like he's lost out there, or he's, it's like he's running at 3/4 speed. That like where before in Andy Kotelnicki's system, he flourished. It's like he's gone back to being a caterpillar from being a butterfly. Drew Aller, on the other hand, if you look at what going at Penn State, he looked like he was a guy who, was playing in cement boots half the time, and now he's pretty damn fun to watch. So coordinators do make a big difference, even with people like Jalen Daniels who are super talented. And I would not be surprised to see, if this Kansas team winds up right now they're not going to make a bowl game, but if it looks like they're going to be old school Kansas real quick, I think Lance Leipold will, let Jeff Grimes coach some tight ends or something and let somebody else call those plays.
Yeah, I mean, they lost by 6, they lost by 3, they lost by 4, and they lost by 11. So it's like not like they're getting smoked, but obviously the disconnect on offense is causing them a lot of their problems. I mean, they're giving – I don't think their defense has been terrible, but because their offense is giving other teams like a lot of extra possessions. So it's just – and like Kansas defense usually is pretty they're 73rd in defense right now, 23.8 points per game allowed, but like they're spending a lot more time in the field. So their defense kind of actually is – I think it's fair to say like kind of where we all thought it would be, considering the extra opportunities that other offenses are getting. I think you're right about that being the biggest surprise. I think you're spot on with that.
That to me is the biggest surprise. West Virginia, Oklahoma State, both these teams need something good to happen. West Virginia's had more good recently than Oklahoma State. Like I said earlier, they're in a waking nightmare where they've got one of the best running backs in the country. They have, they had an offensive line that's all coming back, and they've got 3 really good wide receivers. But Alan Bowman's played poorly. The defense is a mess, and the offensive line has not met the moment of being a veteran offensive line with 100 starts between him or whatever it is. Like more than 100, but like this 200 starts of offensive line and all the things they brought back. That's not been par for the course for them, and they go on the road, a tough place to play in Morgantown, and they're kind of listless right now.
They're at home. They're at home.
Oh, they're at home. Sorry. Yeah, they're at Stillwater. Yeah, okay.
You're good.
Yeah, they're at Stillwater. So Stillwater hasn't made a difference for them recently.
No. It just baffles. I once again go back to like the Spencer Sanders situation. I remember Robert Allen telling us when I was at XM about how like Spencer asked to come back, and Mike Gundy said no. And last year, I know Oklahoma State won 10 games, but if you remember Spencer Sanders' first 7 games that he had before he got injured against TCU back in 2022, he was like the most valuable offensive player in the Big 12. Not saying he was the best, but he was definitely most valuable. And I have a really difficult time with the fact that Mike Gundy could have had him back, and it could have worked out for everybody. But instead, last year they were terrible at quarterback, and it cost them a couple games. And also, Spencer Sanders sat at Ole Miss. And so it's like, why is this happening? And then they bring Alan Bowman back. And like, I know Alan Bowman's the quarterback of a 10-win team, but like nobody thinks they won those games because of Alan Bowman.
Yeah.
It's just so, and I know Mike Gundy's got a system, but like you could have gotten somebody better to come in. There is so many transfer quarterbacks now. You couldn't have pulled somebody from a G5 and gotten them into the program. Like there was nobody else out there, really.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, even like a Preston Stone, like I know Preston Stone hasn't been good, but like the SMU offense isn't really built around him. But like, hell, if we're going statuesque quarterbacks, like I'll like, why not take somebody else? Because Bowman can't run. Which also is weird to me too, because it's like modern quarterbacks need to be able to do both. And I don't know why that's what Spencer was really good at too. So,
and they don't need it like they don't need to run. They don't need to be Jalen Milroe, right?
No,
they can do all the things,
they don't need that.
But they do need to be able to, when it's 3rd and 7 and you have 8 yards in front of you, run that 8 yards. Like that's what they need to do. And
he can barely extend plays. He cannot really he extends plays and throws the ball away.
Yeah, exactly. So, you don't. Yeah. Everybody, it'd be great to have Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders or whatever, but there's also guys. I'll just give you the example of a guy who his offensive coordinator went to a new school, brought him with him, and kind of snuck everybody under the radar. And now, even though they're not great, they're a tough out because of him. And it's that Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt. Pavia at Vanderbilt. Like
that's like a class. It's like we like I was maybe he's got really big academic aspirations. I don't know what it is. I think he's already graduated though. But like, I was like, Vanderbilt, how'd this happen? Because that kid was really good. There's a bunch of those guys out there, you know. Caden Rourke. I think Caden Rourke went to what, in Indiana, maybe. Yeah. They couldn't have Caden Rourke. Couldn't have the JMU kid. The JMU kid's at where is he at now?
Texas State.
Yeah, we couldn't have got one of these guys in there. Like, seriously?
Yeah, like that. That's where you need to go. Like, that's where you need to go. I see Oklahoma State, Florida State made the same mistake. Like, instead of going and getting Pavia, getting Jordan McLeod or something like that for your 1-year bridge quarterback, you know, someone who can do that. Mike Norvell saw like, oh, DJU, is this a 5-star kid? Well, he's never been a 5-star player.
No,
like he's not. So like, let that go. Like, they should have let that go, and that was one of the many anchors to this season, but that was the heaviest one. And Alan Bowman, I think when you get to 7-year quarterbacks, and I didn't believe this for Cam Rising, but I'm starting to believe it now because he's not playing for them, that maybe you just need to go, move on.
Yeah.
Because if you want to win the conference.
It sets your team back.
Yeah. If you want to win the conference, if you want to compete for the playoff, if you look at the teams who are going to be doing that, you know, I know a lot of them are SEC teams, but their quarterbacks are going to be getting calls from the NFL. Like, whether it's first round, second round, third round, you know, late in the draft, all those teams are going to be doing that. That's not happening with guys like Rising and Bowman.
Yeah, I think Cam Rising might be a little bit different if he stayed healthy, though. You know, I think his reality would be a bit different. But I see your point. I'm actually interested to see what Utah what kind of playoff consideration they get, because like, I feel like the committee can do whatever they want with like after last year with Florida State. Yeah. I feel like you can bend the quarterback thing to any argument, you know, like it's like if let's just say Cam Rising comes back, they play really well, and then like, you know, he gets dinged up again in the championship game, you know, or like before that, and they go win the Big 12 championship, and then but he's supposed to come back and you know, the playoff round. Well, they'd be like, well, we know they're good with Rising, and we know they didn't have him in the end. But you know, like I just this, you know, like what the seating looks like, how they treat it. Just like I'm really curious to see how they're going to treat that, because I think Utah Rising is I think they might be a top 10 team. I really do believe that. But it's going to be interesting to see, because he's never out there. Yeah,
absolutely. Baylor is 2-4. They go up to Ames. It's not their favorite place to be. They fell behind. Like, they're really good in the second half, but it's like nobody tells them that there's two halves in a game. If they can put together a 4-quarter game, maybe they can do something, but they have yet to do that. You know, since conference season started, and every good team they've played, they've lost to this season. So what do they have to do to get over on an Iowa State team that just does not make mistakes?
Pray to God. I don't know. They need to find They need to find something. Look, I just don't think they're very good. Paul, I'm going to actually keep this answer short. I just don't think they're very good. I don't think. It's funny. I'm watching the reverse happen with Arkansas right now. Like, it's like, why isn't our foot down on the throttle to start games when we start games poorly? Mm-hmm. And one of my radio hosts today was like, I want Sam Pittman to bang his head against the wall. He's not going to do that, because that's not who he is.
Yeah.
It's Oklahoma State second half. My host was like, step on their necks. And I'm like, yeah, but like, that's not who he is. He's not going to be like, kill them, rip their throats out. Like, it's not that's not who Dave Aranda is either. I appreciate him for that, but this team lacks killer instinct. And Iowa State, Matt Campbell, my God, we just didn't talk about him at all. We're still not talking about him now.
Yeah.
But once they cleared Iowa, you know, you see the Arkansas State game, they shut out Houston. At West Virginia next week is going to be their toughest challenge before they come back home for UCF and Tech. I mean, we might be looking at what is that? They're at 4 now, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 8-0.
Yeah.
For this group, before they go to KU and Cincinnati. I mean, the last two are tough, at Utah and at K-State, or Utah and then K-State. But like, they have a chance to do something pretty impressive here. The schedule's laying out nice for them.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. All right.
Sorry, Baylor fans. I know this is a Baylor show, but like,
No.
I think Baylor and Arkansas are in very, very similar spots.
Yeah.
And I've said this to you, Paul. I think Baylor is a program with given the resources and given the facts on the ground. The facts on the ground are this. Last 15 years, 3 separate coaches have won 10-plus games. If that does not mean that you can win at a place, I don't know what does. Do you think is that fair to say?
Yeah. No. Like the excuses are gone. Like now, look, they have to match, at least to their capability,
yes,
the new world of it,
right,
which is the problem. I think now Dave Aranda didn't quite grasp like how earth-shattering this was.
Yeah,
or maybe he did, but he thought like when NIL came, it was going to be egalitarian, and it's not. It's that's his mistake. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you thought this was going to be something different than it was before, like because remember what we had before was just it's like, oh, this kid's a late flip. Why did he flip? Why do you think he flipped? I just love the campus. You do really? You love the campus?
You didn't love it 2 weeks ago?
Oh, you found how much money was under that seat cushion in the student center? Like, come on, man. Like, and now it's above board and it makes people uncomfortable and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure he was one of the guys who's best. Because like, here's the thing now is like, if we were paying players before and we're paying players now again, like, yes, you are going to get situations where Quinshon Judkins goes to Ole Miss. But I remember recording the Rivals last year. Like, I think it was the first time ever the top 11 5-stars all went to different schools. Mm-hmm. So like there is an ability to spread things out. So it's actually what it always was before. It's money plus coaching. It's just, I think now that the big stress is like, there's not enough money to go around at this point in time.
Oh yeah.
Donor fatigue has already set in. And once again, they're going to be employees in like less than 5 years. So it's not really going to matter that much anyway. But yeah, I'm not really sure he was most fit to handle that. But I'll tell you what, man, I think Baylor and Arkansas are in pretty similar spots. And if you ask me who I would rather be as a program, I'd rather be Baylor because the conference they're in and because the state they're in.
Yeah.
Because Arkansas's best asset is Texas. So I'd rather be in Texas and have Baylor's money and be in Baylor's conference.
Which is why I suspect that Arkansas will hire somebody who has very strong ties to Texas.
I believe there are 2 coaches, G.J. Kinney and Jeff Traylor, who would be my first 2 calls.
I would throw the third one in to be Rhett Lashley to me. But
okay, yeah, but
definitely. They may not do that because
he's got an Arkansas connection too. So yeah,
yeah. But I would say that maybe they don't do that just because the last SMU coach they hired didn't work out.
It scarred them for life. Yeah, actually, I'm not sure they can do that again.
Yeah. So even though one doesn't have anything to do with the other, like it's just it's PTSD. That's okay, we'll do a couple more real quick. UCF at Florida. Does Billy Napier walk out of this getting to keep his job for another week, or does he lose to a team that his entire alumni base would rather spit on than save from a ditch and get fired?
It's the game he cannot lose, right?
Yeah.
And it would be the last parting shot, I guess, for him to the fan base to let them lose this game. I think UCF wins.
I do too. I think Florida, I don't think they have, like, if you've watched Florida at all this year, they have no continuity.
Rudderless.
They're just
completely rudderless.
Yeah, and they're like, hey, we're going to play these 2 quarterbacks. And you're like, all right. Like other than like, you know what's funny? Because at Florida, historically, it worked out for a season, right? Because they had Jesse Palmer and Doug Johnson. Like they had 2 guys that were pretty good, and they're able to do it. But like the instances of this working out are few and far between.
I think they miss Ricky Pearsall a lot too. I think they've got they suck.
Well, he had the best hand. He had the best hands in the country.
Yes.
And when he starts playing, you'll see he probably has some of the best hands in the NFL.
Yeah, and the contested catch rate like for him must have been crazy because I mean it felt like all of his throws to him were contested.
Yeah.
But he caught all of them anyway. So yeah.
Over under Tech in Arizona 64.5.
That is going way over. I can't believe that number is that low. It's 64.5.
Yeah, 64.5.
Have they watched Texas Tech play at all this year?
Yeah.
44-41. There's an over.
It's the same over under as West Virginia and Oklahoma State.
I mean, they play Abilene Christian. There was 103 points in that game.
Yeah.
Washington State was the bad one, but that one still had 53 in that one. There were 87 points between them and North Texas, 55 against them in Cincinnati, against them in Arizona State, and then 85, against Cincinnati. So I'm going to go over.
Gonna go the over. Do you think that Tech wins that game?
No.
No. You think Arizona and Fafita win the game?
I do. I think they've got the better quarterback. And in a game where defense might not matter very much, I will take the better quarterback.
There we go. Josh.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah.
They've got the better quarterback and they're the best offensive player in the field.
Yeah. Josh Neighbors, who is very soon have to get in the car and go to Arkadelphia, Arkansas. Yeah. Arkadelphia. You've probably never been there.
No reason to, unless you were a Ouachita Baptist University alum.
Who is that? Is that Walt Garrison that went to Ouachita Baptist? I want to say.
Great question. Not sure.
I think it's Walt Garrison.
Not sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but I think it's Walt Garrison, Cowboys legend, who chewed tobacco during the games.
That's awesome.
Just to let you know how long ago that was. But that's Josh Neighbors, Big 12 Watch. Find him on YouTube, Big 12 Watch. Josh, enjoy the weekend, buddy. We'll talk to you next week.
I'll try, Paul.
There you go. Josh Ducey, that's great. He's a little world weary today.
Yeah, he's a little spacey.
A little spacey. Like, that's not you know what? He needs a nap.
He does.
He needs a nap.
Man
he definitely needed a nap. You saw him just chugging down the coffee there. So, all right. When we come back, it's the top 5. Everyone's favorite part of the day, except for the people who hate it. So everyone, except for those people who hate the top 5, it's their favorite part of the day. That's coming up next. This is 365 Sports.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
Time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Happy Friday, everybody. It's the end of the show. But fear not, we have one more jocularity-packed Top 5 of the week. This one, staff shakeups that are coming, of course, are brought to you by Texas Beef House. What's the promo code? It's 365 Sports. Duh. I shouldn't have to tell you all the time, but I'm happy to because Texas Beef House is fantastic. Fantastic. The best Wagyu beef you can get and raised right here in the Lone Star State where beef should come from. Staff shakeups that are on the way. Now, these are not hot seats or, coaches that are getting fired. These are coaches that are going to have to make staff changes because they're deficient on one side of the ball or deficient in a certain thing and need to spruce it up so they don't wind up on the hot seat. Number 5, Purdue's offensive staff. I know that all these people are going to look happy, and I think this guy might actually be at a basketball game, but if you know anything about what's gone on this week, Graham Harrell already out the door. So Purdue's offensive staff is already shaken up. And this guy looks like he's on ecstasy. So I think that's pretty much what you have to do to make Purdue's offense tolerable right now is just pop a bean. But that is coming. It's on the way already. Graham Harrell already out the door, and I expect more shuffling to go on throughout the season and the offseason for the Boilermakers as they try to pump up their offense. Number 4, FSU. Surrender Cobra here from this lovely lady. And that's pretty much the FSU look for the season. I know it because this is my spirit animal right now. But they've got to make some changes to their recruiting staff. They've lost 4 blue-chip recruits in the last month amid a 1-4 start. That cannot happen. Plus, their high school recruiting has to get better. One of the reasons that they're in this position right now at 1-4 is you live by the portal and you die by the portal, and they rebuilt that team mostly through the portal, and they have not hit the ground running on high school recruiting like they should. They've got to get better at that. Actually, that's what Miami is doing better than them. But if Florida State can make some changes to their staff, particularly at certain positions and guys who are plus recruiters, that's going to go a long way to fixing Mike Norvell's issues in Tallahassee. Number 3, NC State, the defensive staff. And these two party animals here, they know it. Their team can't stop anybody, which is wild considering that's what Dave Doran has built his personality on as a coach. It's tough-nosed, hard, just defenses that get after you and don't let you breathe all that much. That's not going on with the Wolfpack right now. That defensive staff is going to get a shakeup because they could not tackle somebody to save their lives. Number 2, Texas Tech, also the defensive staff. I'm now looking at this and I'm thinking I maybe should have picked another gift so this one doesn't keep me up at night.
Yeah.
This guy's having too much fun with that bell. But hey, West Texas, am I right? But Texas Tech is going to have to make some shakeups on their defensive staff. You see when Taj Brooks is in the game, when everybody's healthy, their offense is nigh unstoppable. But their defense, stoppable? Don't really get enough stops. The stress of the games has to end. And Joey McGuire is a guy who also is more of a defensive-minded guy. Believe it or not. I mean, that's kind of his personality. But they've got to get better on that side of the ball. I expect some shakeups there to make things a little better on that side. Because, look, if this is a team that on a bad day is going to score 30 points, if you can keep everybody to 21, you're going to win most games by 2 scores. Texas Tech is right there, and I think all their fans know it. They're right there about to maybe do something and be a player in this conference year in and year out and not this roller coaster they've been riding, but it's got to be fixed on the defensive side of the ball. Yes, their offense could use some tweaking, but mostly the defensive side of the ball has been the bugaboo for far too long in Lubbock. And number 1, Kentucky, their offensive staff. I put up this picture of their erstwhile former basketball coach saying this is a basketball school, and they're going to mostly win, oops-a-daisy, with defensive games. Look, they scored 20 points and beat Ole Miss, which is a really great offensive team, last week. That's not something you can do all the time. They held Georgia to 13. So you've got defense with a Stoops brother running your program locked down. Liam Cohen is off to the NFL again, and if you look at Baker Mayfield's numbers for the Bucs, way, way, way up. They need to find their next Liam Cohen at Kentucky, or Mark Stoops is going to wish he'd taken that A&M job when it was offered to him. This is the top 5. Have a great weekend, everybody.